across the UK. On DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Yeah, good afternoon. Thank you to Julia. She's back tomorrow morning at 10 o'clock. What have we got this afternoon? What about this? 5 years ago, we first saw one of these reports. A report that said that working-class white boys are still academically underperforming. This is Lord Sewell's 2021 Commission on Race and Ethnic Disparities, warning that these kids trail behind their peers in almost all ethnic minority groups. Lord Sewell now repeats his concern. Nothing has changed. White working-class boys from the poorest homes are still stuck at the bottom of the class. Why are they getting left behind? Your thoughts on that, please. Also this afternoon, Kemi Badenoch accusing the Prime Minister of cultural cover-ups after the government delayed publicly disclosing an Iranian missile attack on the British territory of Diego Garcia. The government only confirmed the strike, which critics call a cover-up, over 30 hours after it occurred, and only once US officials had publicly confirmed it. Details to come. And Britain's fears of a rise in migrant boat crossings continues as £475 million, 3 years of agreed funding for the French patrols, expires soon. Talks to replace it have ended unresolved. The Home Secretary wants a new deal until 2029 to include performance-related clauses. Good luck with that. Making future funding conditional on French interception success. Will the French step up to the plate? We will watch with interest, but we won't hold our breath, of course. We'll bring you everything that you need to know. Naturally, all the breaking news right here on Talk. 0344 499 1000. That is where you'll find us. You can leave a voice note there as well. And, of course, you can message 87222. Why have white working class boys been left behind? How many years can we go on reading the same headline that Britain has failed white working class boys? They remain the worst performing group in the country's schools. Lord Sewell is going to make this announcement and brief Keir Starmer this week. Here he is.
I really want to help, and I'm doing it already, and I'm working with the teachers in those areas. White working class boys, particularly.
Yeah.
You know, my vision is to help them. You know,
well, they've been neglected.
That's right, for years.
Yeah.
And you know, and then I got a phone call with a friend of mine, a close relative, and they were upset. Why would you want to work for working class white children?
Really?
Yes.
Yeah.
I thought,
well, that's racism.
That?
That's racism.
Why would you say that?
Yeah.
And I said to him, you know, I wrote back and said, that's the problem we've got in England at the moment, this division. You're making this division.
There is a division. The Tory peer has said that this particular group is still stuck at the bottom of the class after successive governments ignored his warning. So it was 2021, as I mentioned, that Black Lives Matter movement, Boris Johnson, asked Lord Sewell to chair an inquiry. There were nearly a dozen commissioners. All but one of them were from ethnic minorities. Their 250-page report said the biggest driver of disparities were not race, but actually class, geography, stability, with white working classes doing the worst. What do you put that down to? Why are white working class boys? I can have a few guesses myself on this one. The research published this weekend by the Centre for Social Justice showed that little had changed since then, with white British boys on free school meals more likely to fail GCSE English, maths, etc., most likely to be excluded from school and least likely to stay on at education. So we've got only 36% of white working class boys on free school meals met their expected GCSE standards last year, barely half the national average. Why is nobody going nuts about this? Why is nobody leaping from their place of concern into a more, frankly, serious arena of debate on this? This is a crime scene. Every other disadvantaged group outperformed white working class boys. It's a national scandal. It's in plain sight. They've known it for years, and no one has done anything about it. What are the reasons behind this? Structural, cultural are the obvious explanations. Poverty, low literacy, post-industrial generational unemployment, and a near total absence of targeted support. Because when it comes to the classroom, the teaching profession has looked at that group and gone, well, you're probably all right, little white kids, you'll be fine, won't you? We've got other groups we've got to look at first. And that, I sense, has been the problem. Schools routinely stream these boys into lower sets where expectations collapse and a watered-down curriculum cements their subordinate position. They have been marked out for failure since about the age of 8. The Education Secretary has called these outcomes for white working-class kids a national disgrace. OK, well, prove you're going to do something about it, because nobody has so far. White working-class kids are getting left behind. And it's, you know what, even this story is hardly big headlines today. Why not? And what is the reason behind it? 0344 499 1000. We'll take your calls on that. Loads to get through on that one. Meanwhile and elsewhere, here's a question. Are we heading towards World War III?
It's very important we defend our interests, we defend British lives, but without getting dragged into the war. And that's the clear divide I've put in place. Yes, defend our interests, defend British lives. No, not get dragged into the war.
Naturally, you'd like your comments on this. Prime Minister Keir Starmer and US President Donald Trump agree that the reopening of the Strait of Hormuz is essential to resume global shipping. This was a call they had yesterday. Apparently it went on for hours. The Prime Minister will later today lead a Cobra meeting with the Chancellor, Rachel Reeves, and the Governor of the Bank of England, Andrew Bailey. There's others there as well, on the economic impact of war. So this has got to a really serious level on the economics of the thing. We understand that. On Saturday night, of course, Trump gave Iran a 48-hour deadline to reopen the strait, or he said the US would obliterate Iranian power plants, starting with the biggest one first. Today, however, he's just changed his mind and says he's postponing those strikes. Are you keeping up with this? And then yesterday, a senior cabinet minister, Steve Reed, said there was no specific assessment that the Iranians are targeting the UK after word was out that maybe they could target from there. Remember the 45-minute claim back in Iraq? Was it in that territory? I'm not so sure. I wouldn't be so confident. Are we heading towards World War III? Your assessment of what is happening in Iran so far. 0344 499 1000. Let's get a word on this and the other big stories of the day. Journalist, columnist Dave Wooding back with us. Dave, good afternoon to you.
Afternoon, Ian.
Nice to have you with us. Let's start then with a bit of Lord Sewell. This is 5 years after that first report, 2021, where he gave that warning that white working class boys remain at the bottom of the pile. All the attainment metrics pointed to them lagging behind almost all other ethnic minority groups. Let's have a listen to what he said, talking about working class boys.
I really want to help, and I'm doing it already, and I'm working with the teachers in those areas. White working class boys, particularly, you know, my vision is to help them. You know,
well, they've been neglected.
That's right,
they?
for years.
Yeah.
And you know, and then I got a phone call with a friend of mine, a close relative, and they were upset. Why would you want to work for working class white children?
Really?
Yes.
Yeah.
I thought,
well, that's racism. That's racism.
Why would you say that?
Yeah.
And I said to him, you know, I wrote back and said, that's the problem we've got in England at the moment, this division. You're making this division.
Constantly, Dave, this headline seems to pop up on an annual. You can almost put it in your calendar now. Nothing has changed.
Absolutely, Ian. I was just thinking about 30 years ago, I was an education correspondent. And during my few years of doing that, this story came up on a regular intervals.
Yeah.
I remember putting it up to my news desk one year, and they said, "Oh, this is old. We've had this story before." I said, "Yep, it was last year when the figures came out." Well, you know, it's an old story, and it's been there. It's been a niggling sore for governments, but they've done nothing about it.
Yep.
And Lord Sewell, this committee, there's 10 people on this committee, all but one of them is black or an ethnic minority. And that was set up in the wake of the Black Lives Matter movement. And they came back with the conclusion that it's white working class boys who are falling behind.
Yeah.
So how many times do we have to say it before somebody does something? Not only are these boys failing to reach the acquired standard in English and maths, they're more likely to be excluded from school, and they're least likely to stay on after the age of 16.
Yep.
I mean, the figures are stark here. As you say, white working class boys, 36%, just over a third of them, make the grade at English and maths. You compare that with Chinese boys on free school meals, 82%. You know, even black Africans are 58%, and Bangladeshis 68%.
Yeah.
So it's something to do with our culture, but it's also to do with the fact, I suspect, that woke teachers are putting more effort into the other kids and not looking at where the problems lie.
I think, yeah, I sense, I know that sounds like a kind of an easy response, but it's not an easy response, but I can imagine in the classroom with so many headlines about, you know, inequality, whether those headlines are correct or not, that's certainly out there in people's minds. So teachers have sort of put all their focus into, you know, young black boys as an example, and forgotten the young white boys who are bottom of the pile at the moment. And it could almost be, and I'm sure it's more complex, Dave, but initially it could be as simple as that.
Yeah, and it's an inequality that is not being addressed. There are many inequalities in our society, but whenever you hear politicians talking about inequality, they talk about ethnic minorities, they talk about religious minorities, they talk about women, they talk about sexuality, but never do they talk about social class. And the problem is, it's the social classes who are not getting a leg up in their lives. And these boys will be destined to a life on the dole or underachievement because they've given a bad start. And it's crucial, you know, Tony Blair said, tough on crime, tough on the causes of crime.
Yeah.
One of the causes of crime is lack of education and lack of support. Another issue in which we haven't touched on is perhaps role models in school. Most primary schools have women teachers. There are fewer and fewer men taking up these jobs. What these underprivileged white schoolboys need probably is a sir who's going to be on their side, who play football with them at games and put an arm around them when they need it and give them some support, show them encouragement, act as a mentor. That's what's needed, and there's not enough of that in schools too.
Spot on. That is the question we're throwing out. Why have working class boys been left behind? 0344 499 1000. 1:15. Let's move to this story, Dave. Keir Starmer facing accusations of a cover-up last night following that delayed public disclosure regarding the Iranian missile attack on British overseas territory. The government only acknowledged the attempted strike on Diego Garcia 30 hours after it happened. Let's hear from Keir Starmer speaking earlier today.
It's very important we defend our interests, we defend British lives, but without getting dragged into the war. And that's the clear divide I've put in place. Yes, defend our interests, defend British lives. No, not get dragged into the war.
Yeah, well, I think we are dragged into the war, Dave, aren't we?
Absolutely. Like it or not, is half in, half out stance on the war in Iran is not really working. All that's happening is he's upsetting the allies who want us involved, the Americans for a start, and then he's upsetting the Iranians because they don't see it as we're not involved. I mean, he's dithered, he's delayed, he's tried to walk on that line, sitting on the fence, and it's backfired on him massively. We are in a bit of a mess in this one about we're showing complete lack of leadership.
It's interesting, isn't it, that the Prime Minister keeps sort of talking as if we're not involved at all, Dave, as if we're, no, I told Keir Starmer, told President Trump, nothing, we can't be involved. Well, we are involved at many levels on this. I mean, obviously, Diego Garcia is there, a typical example. Other air bases that the Americans are now allowed to use, so they've increased that possibility. But even without this war, the Iranian government didn't exactly go a bundle on Britain, did it? I mean, it wasn't exactly a place where they thought, these are our mates. We were always America's little brother, as far as they were concerned.
Absolutely, and the opening shots were the Akrotiri RAF base in Cyprus, where the Cypriot Prime Minister, or was he the Foreign Minister, ended up saying, well, if Britain can't defend its own territory within Cyprus, then perhaps we should look again at allowing them to have a base here. So, I mean, we're alienating our allies, and that's not doing anything to keep us out of this war in any way, shape, or form. And now we've had this strike on Akrotiri, on Diego Garcia. The Prime Minister, why does he not want to give us the bad news? I mean, Winston Churchill during the war during the Second World War, was straight about telling the people everything, good news and bad news, and they trusted him. The difficulty when you don't start coming clean quickly and you have to leave it to American news agencies and American newspapers to break the news to British citizens is that they don't trust what you're telling them.
Indeed. We'll take calls on that as well. Are we, is this like World War III about to happen or something? What do you make of it, our relationship with Iran? And the question we began with, why have white working class boys been left behind? Let's get a voice note on this issue from Sean.
Afternoon, Ian. The question about the white working class not doing as well as others, I mean, it's something that we've known for a long time, but it leads into your other question about are we heading towards World War III? Because if we were heading to a World War III, then the white working class would be the first ones to get called up. Without a shadow of a doubt, we'll call them up to go do the fighting.
Yeah.
Great show, mate.
Sure. Yeah, thank you, mate, for that. And you are absolutely bang on. If it came to that kind of level, I don't think it will, but if it did, then that'd be the first cohort they go to. Yeah, all you lads over there, come and join us, fight for your country, give it large. You can absolutely see that happening. Why are white working class boys being left behind? 0344 499 1000. This is Talk.
The Crown is facing its gravest test in decades, and the royalty from Talk is your front row seat. With royal reputations under pressure and probing questions about public trust, we unpack every twist and revelation with the biggest names in the business. From the throne room at Buckingham Palace to a mansion in Montecito, we follow every royal ripple. Never miss a moment of The Crown in crisis. Subscribe to the royalty from Talk on the app or wherever you get your podcasts.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
One in from Rich, who says there's also a lack of mentors for boys at home. Most families now are single, and I know people who've got brothers and sisters with 2 or 3 different dads. Yeah, I mean, it's probably something in that as well. Is it the role model thing? Is it the lack of emphasis from teachers? Is there some other cultural reason why white working class boys are getting left behind? Academically, the lowest rung of the educational ladder. Now, if I honestly think if that was any other ethnic group, there would be, you can almost see the questions being fired at the government in Parliament, particularly on those Labour backbenches. Thoughts on that? 0344 499 1000. Dave Wooding is with us, columnist at The Sun, political journalist of decades, been around the Westminster block many times, Dave, and the news just keeps on coming. Let's move to this one. Metropolitan Police treating the firebombing outside a London synagogue where 4 ambulances were set on fire as a hate crime. Counter-terrorism police are investigating the anti-Semitic attack, which the Telegraph reports is suspected to have been orchestrated by Iran. Keir Starmer spoke this morning on this issue.
Well, this is a horrific anti-Semitic attack. And, of course, my thoughts, I think all of our thoughts, will be with those in the vicinity, the residents who are understandably very concerned, a Jewish community across the country deeply concerned. I've already been in touch with community leaders this morning and will continue to do so during the day. But anti-Semitism has no place in our society, and it's really important that we all stand together at a moment like this.
Yeah, I mean, they love the phrase stand together, it has no place, etc. They're the usual kind of stock responses, aren't they, Dave, from a Prime Minister? And I think he really felt he was like saying something new when he said that. His voice went into a more energetic mode at that point. Either way, this is horrific what has happened here. I mean, there's clear anti-Semitic reasoning and motivation behind this. I don't think you'd need to be Columbo to work that out.
Absolutely, and there's 2 elements to this, Ian. One is that it's another sign of the growing anti-Semitism in this country, which some people are likening to what was going on in Germany in the 1930s. I don't think that's particularly alarmist because it is really, really bad in this country at the moment. And we've seen that in these marches where there's slogans being shouted out, and banners proclaiming hatred of Jews. So there's that. But the other element to it is, as you rightly say, Iran. Is Iran involved in this? Because we had the 2 Iranians have been charged with spying on Jews, which is supposedly, allegedly linked to Iran. And then we had that attack in Manchester earlier in the year, where ended in fatalities.
Sure.
So of course outside the mosque on Yom Kippur with 2 people killed. So it's alarming on both levels here, and it can only get worse if Iran has warned that it will attack all its enemies, and it sees us as part of the great Satan along with America.
And it's that, isn't it, really? We are the enemy, and attacking a Jewish neighbourhood, and particularly something like a charity set up like the ambulance system that they were running there. I mean, it's got all the tropes and all the usual traits of how these people would react. They hate us. I mean, they hate us. They hate Jews in particular, but they hate all of us. Well,
what sort of mentality would you need to attack 4 ambulances which are run by a charity? I mean, what sort of person wants to do that? Only somebody with ingrained deep hatred, or with a motive like the Iranians have at the moment. It is despicable, and understandably, people in the Jewish community, which is a very small minority in this country compared to the Islamic community, they're undeniably concerned about their safety, walking out at night and just going about their ordinary lives.
Let's move to this story. A couple more to get on, Dave. The head of British Gas has urged the government to lift its moratorium on developing new oil and gas reserves in the North Sea. Keeps coming up, this story. According to the executive, exploiting these untapped fields would be beneficial in mitigating the rapidly rising energy costs. Let's hear what the British gas boss told the BBC.
The Cornwall Insight, I think, have predicted that there's going to be an increase in prices. If it stays as it is, then I think that's inescapable. But I don't think it's helpful to have the speculation at the moment, because we have to see what's going to happen over the next 10 weeks.
That's Chris O'Shea. Dave, there it is. So the head of British Gas is saying maybe do a bit of drilling over there, and everybody else is saying, what about a bit of drilling? Look, we've got loads of oil. Let's drill for some. Everyone apart from the government seem to be onto this.
Yes, we're sitting on huge reserves of oil and gas under the North Sea, 150 miles off the coast of Scotland. Yet the Energy Secretary, Ed Miliband, he doesn't want to drill any of it. In fact, he's banned any future drilling over there because he is a green obsessive, an eco-zealot who wants to race towards net zero without even opening his eyes to the crisis unfolding around him. I mean, it's pretty obvious. We can't survive on wind and solar power when the Strait of Hormuz is blockaded, where 20% of the world's oil come from. Petrol and diesel prices are rocketing along with gas prices, and he's sitting on his hands and saying we can't do anything about it. But I think that we're going to hear more and more people talking like this. Not only has Chris O'Shea of Centrica spoken out, but Greg Jackson of the energy giant Octopus said something should happen as well. And in The Sun this morning, Henry Tufnell, the Mid and South Pembrokeshire MP, a Labour MP, has come out and said, we really need to think about drilling for oil and gas. It's there on our doorstep or beneath our feet, and it can help to alleviate prices. But what does the government talk about? It talks about putting more money into people's pockets. It's not a free subsidy for them. We're all paying for it out of our taxes, and we can't keep dishing out money to people to survive this crisis. We have to do something to create the resources. It's
almost like if you tell Ed Miliband about drilling, it's almost like you suggested shooting his dog. You know, it's like the most horrific thing could ever be said. It's like, you know, uttering a sort of racial expletive at a dinner party. That's how bad it is. How dare you talk about oil? That's the past. This is the future. He's massively missed the point. He's an evangelist on this one. I'm not even convinced he really knows what he's talking about, to be honest, Dave. But he's got the top job, and he seems to largely be left to it by the Prime Minister, which is interesting. Final one here. This one drove me absolutely mad. Leeds City Council, OK, we're expecting and will be expecting a visit from Nigel Farage. He's visiting the city, as politicians and party leaders do. However, there was a problem with this. So Leeds City Council staff were offered counselling in a safe space to help them cope with the idea that Nigel Farage could be in the same city. The council's head of human resources sent an email urging staff to use well-being network chats and to be vigilant in the city centre that day. I mean, Dave, what the hell is going on? What's happened to our country?
This is trigger warnings gone mad. I mean, I think we all need counselling at the moment if the current crisis goes on, never mind Nigel Farage arriving on our doorstep. It's ludicrous. It's clearly being political as well, circulating to your staff that Nigel Farage is coming into town. Yep. Be careful when you go out on the streets. If you need any help or support, come into this safe space. That is suggesting to these people that he's a dangerous individual, which he isn't. He's just a politician who has a view, and a view which is shared by large numbers of people in our society.
But it's also that we spoke on Friday to a guy who was a diplomat in the Foreign Office for 10 years, South Asian origin, which is relevant to the story, and he just left the Foreign Office because he couldn't cope with guff like this. And he was talking about how, you know, they spent more time worrying about racial awareness courses on a day when something big had happened in Iraq or something. They were celebrating National Afro Day, and they couldn't work out why he didn't want to be there. And he said, well, I'm in the Foreign Office. You know, I'm here to deal with foreign affairs and put Britain at the top of the queue when it comes to our concerns. And he was looked at like some kind of weirdo. This is the same thing, isn't it? When you get these sort of groupthink civil servant posts, the head of human resources in any other world would just be fired for being an idiot. But no, in this case, this is what this person thought they were meant to do. I mean, why are the council getting involved in this old nonsense?
Well, Nigel Farage has said that if Reform UK forms a government, it will crack down on what he calls the woke blob. And this is part of the woke blob. The council spending its time putting out meetings like this purely to make a political point. And a woke political point, i.e., that Nigel Farage is a dangerous individual, and if it terrifies you, we'll look after you. You know, what they should be doing, these workers should be sitting in their office. They shouldn't be anywhere near Nigel Farage. They'll be out on the streets. They should be in their office making
that's true. Yeah.
that they're delivering public services, that the bins are being emptied, that the potholes, 1 million potholes in our roads.
But it's the workplace, isn't it? I mean, it would make more sense if it was some kind of mad left-wing charity and they were offering, you know, staff some quiet moments to sit and not get triggered by Mr. Farage being in the same postcode. You could sort of slightly make sense of it in that sort of slightly left-wing, insane way. But this is the council, for God's sake. This is the local democracy centre of Leeds. And the head of human resources is monkeying around, trying to offer solace to people that might be upset because they don't like the cut of the Reform leader's jib. I mean, it's extraordinary. Dave, we've hit the clock. Brilliant to talk to you as ever. We'll speak again very, very soon. He's Dave Wooding, the political journalist, Sun columnist as well. Thank you to him. Over to you on all of that. Why have white working class boys been... Shall I say that again? Why have white working class boys been left behind? What's behind that as far as you can see? Or is it just good old-fashioned white privilege at work again? Right. 0344 499 1000. This is Talk.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
It is Talk, 0344 499 1000. Vince says, why is everybody surprised that white working class boys are not doing well at school? It was the last Blair Brown Labour government that changed the equality in schools, saying foreign boys were not doing well, and then changed the system, giving them an average over, I think there should be an advantage over everyone else. Decades later, this is what you get. This is just another Labour failed policy in action from the last Labour government. Vince says school education is not equal. It's one-sided, honing against bright British white boys, clear as day. And the current Labour government will do nothing, as the last Labour government started it, just like everything else. Although we know the Education Secretary has, and I quote, said it's a national disgrace. Well, identifying it is one thing and saying things like that is one thing. Doing something about it is quite another. This is 5 years after the Sewell Report. 2021 came after Boris Johnson, Black Lives Matter, and all of that. They commissioned this race and ethnic disparities, warning of low educational achievements of white working class boys at the bottom of the ladder. Nothing, it seems, has changed in 5 years. Let's speak with Edward Davis, Director of Research at the Centre for Social Justice. Good afternoon to you, Edward. Nice to have you with us.
Hi there, thanks for having me.
It's interesting, isn't it? Because in any other world, if something had not changed at all in 5 years, people will be sitting up going, right, we've now got a really serious problem because we identified it half a decade ago. Nothing's happened.
I think you're right. And I think part of this is that we're happy to sort of talk about it in abstract terms, but when we get to what is actually going on, it's really hard and sensitive because this isn't really about schools or policies. This is about families and culture. And so what we're actually talking about is, can we come up with policies that get deep into family life? And that is just something politicians don't like to talk about.
We've had a lot of calls and different theories on what is going on here, and you know, you're bang on here. You know, the family issue, cultural issues, along with, as some people see it, white boys being white working class boys being sort of left alone because there's been such an effort over the years to try and have a focus on little white boys from ethnic minorities, whereas little non-white boys from ethnic minorities. As a result, it's left out little white boys. Is that true? Do you sense that is also a factor in this?
So not that much, if I'm honest. So when we look at boys in the whole, in the round, boys are falling behind girls right across the board. If you are a girl, you will do better at SATs, at GCSEs, at A-levels, university, the whole lot. Where we see a real difference between different ethnicities is in family structure and stability, which isn't really about schools at all. This is about what's going on at home. So we did a look at some of the big national surveys to see the proportion of children that have stable home environments. And to give you a sort of proxy for that, we found that in poor white households, so bottom 20% of income, just 2 in 10 children have married parents. Whereas in poor non-white households, you see that almost 6 in 10 have married parents. And it varies hugely within those groups as well. So, you know, poor Indian, Chinese children will do better than the average white or black child. Between black African and black Caribbean, you see big variation as well, because again, within that culture, you will see different rates of family structure and stability. So the big question really is what's going on at home. And I think there's a massive danger with this conversation that we load more pressure on schools because we're embarrassed to talk about home environment, frankly, when the real gains will be made there.
But how do we, or how does anyone legislate to change the way families or some individuals think? I mean, that's like trying to reinvent the wheel, isn't it?
I mean, there are things we can do. At the moment, the research we've done into this, we've had to harvest from the sort of obscure corners of national data surveys with very small samples. We could just collect proper data to start with. The government really doesn't collect proper data. It doesn't publish proper data. And so if they just put that out, we could at least start having this conversation. Likewise, you know, even talking about it here, I'm really conscious that there's been coverage of this over the weekend, but very few places were willing to talk about these numbers. That people weren't really willing, you know, you go to the BBC, they will never talk about what is going on in families. They will always talk about more money for services. So if we start having these conversations and we start having them data informed, I think we will get somewhere. And there are things we can do. I think you're right. We're turning around an oil tanker. We're changing culture. We're not pulling policy levers. But there's things we can do to change that.
And one of the saddest parts of all of this, of course, it often means that those kids are kind of written off from a really young age.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And in our Lost Boys work, one of the things we discovered, and this is all boys, not just white working class, is that boys start school way behind girls. So that the government has a target of getting 75% of all children school ready. The reality is that 75% of girls already start school ready. Its problem is you've only got 60% of boys starting school ready. So from the very first day of primary school, boys are behind girls. Sure. And then that continues throughout their school life.
Is that just an intrinsic difference between males and females or something else then?
Yeah, potentially. I think that one of the things, we work with thousands of charities here at the CSJ, and we try and harvest their small organisation community groups, and we try and harvest their views on this. And one of the things that's come back quite strongly is just boys and girls are different, particularly at that age. You know, little boys, I've had a couple myself over the years. They're just full of energy, and the school day is designed to sit down and be quiet and get on with things, and that's just not the way little boys are. So there are things we can do in the school system as well that might help boys do better.
It is kind of interesting, that difference. I've got a 7-year-old, and if he has mates around, if one of them's a girl, they'd happily sit there playing with shells or colouring a book. You know, my lad's a nut job, frankly, when he's out in the garden. You know, he wants to kick a ball, throw stuff, climb stuff. I mean, it's a whole different ball game, isn't it?
Yeah, completely. I mean, one of the statistics we've looked at is permanent school exclusions, and 83% of permanent school exclusions are boys. They've got a lot of energy, they mess about. So we've looked at some of the solutions to that, and you see some schools doing really interesting things. We've come across a mixed martial arts school where they just do a lot of martial arts in between lessons. There's a school in New York where they basically alternate every lesson with basketball. And it's just, getting the wiggles out, as I would have said when my boys were little. You run them twice a day, get the wiggles out. And schools are beginning to realise this. And so there are interesting things starting to happen. But it's important that we don't pretend everyone is the same, because we're not.
Absolutely spot on. Edward, great to have you on with us, sir. Thank you very much indeed. Edward Davis, he's Director of Research at the Centre for Social Justice. His look into this suggests that this is more about family than education. So the root cause is in the home, cultural differences, issues around a single parent, homes, other issues that follow that particular cohort around, not so much in the classroom. I'm not so sure that's as exclusive as perhaps Edward put it. I mean, he's done the research in it, but lots of theories coming in from you. Let's speak with Nick Fletcher, former Conservative MP. Nick, good afternoon to you. Just to start off with where I began with Edward there, talking about a report that came out 5 years ago, and nothing's changed in half a decade.
Yeah, no, it's terrible. I mean, I spoke about this on my maiden speech, and it's one of the main reasons I became an MP 6 years ago, is because I saw these white working class lads being left behind in places like Doncaster. And I agree with much of what Ed said. I've worked alongside the CSJ and along with Ed while I was an MP down in Westminster. But look, for the last 20 years, what's been happening is we've been encouraging girls, which is a wonderful thing to do. And we've had a national conversation about racism, which again is a wonderful thing to do. Unfortunately, we've had the activists go into our schools and talk about LGBTQ+. So everybody seems to have had somebody shout up for them, apart from the poor working class lad. And unfortunately, when you don't pay any attention to them, then you're going to have these consequences, which is what we're seeing now. So it happens at school. And then, as Ed was saying, we've got an awful lot of families now where there's not both parents there. And regardless of how good single parent families can be, and there's some wonderful single mums out there and some wonderful single dads, obviously they've got twice the work to do because there's only one parent. And so these white working class lads are often, as I said, neglected at school, and when they get home, probably not getting quite as much attention as what they would if they had both parents there, which is obviously a very difficult situation.
So this is, I mean, again, to try and tackle or legislate for what happens not in the classroom but actually in the home is pretty tricky stuff. I mean, is it a case of pleading to parents? Is it does some sort of intervention have to take place? What's even the route we begin to go down, Nick?
Well, we need to look at all the benefit schemes that we're doing. We need to look, I mean, obviously there's an awful lot of money being spent on childcare. Yep. We need to look at this in the round and say, look, how can we work this out so that mums and dads have got a choice to stay at home and look after the children? What we seem to be doing at the moment is putting everything onto schools. I saw a report the other day saying that the schools should be teaching boys how to change a tyre on a car, and we should be teaching them how to cook. Well, they're all the things that my wife and I taught our children to do. So why are we asking schools to do that?
Yes. Yeah.
We're having children come to school that are still in the nappies. Why is that happening? So we seem to have moved more and more and more onto schools and less off parents, and we seem to think that that's a help. Well, maybe, just maybe, if we put the tax system into place and we worked around things properly, we might be able to encourage more parents maybe to stay at home and look after the children, especially in those first few years, which I think is critical. And we also need to make sure that we realise how important it is for dads to be at home with young lads. I think that's absolutely critical. Dads, sons, lads need dads, should they say, just as much as mums, daughters need mums.
Nick, great to have you on as well. Thank you, sir. We'll speak again. Nick Fletcher, former Conservative MP who's worked extensively in this area as well. But why would it be affecting white kids more than black kids? I have to say, in this, if you like, league table of concern, young black kids don't do that much. Young black working class boys, I should say, don't do that much better than white working class boys. So it's quite close. You've got the Bangladeshi community, you've got Pakistani communities, Chinese communities. Kids of that origin, of that ethnic background, are doing so much better. So this is a kind of, I remember speaking to somebody who'd been to Sri Lanka, a journalist who was talking about this, and, you know, he'd gone around a couple of, you know, the archetypal sort of bit of research. He'd gone around these villages, and there was like proper poverty. You know, people really didn't have much at all. The one thing the kids loved doing, they absolutely loved it, and so did their families, was going to school. They even saw it as a privilege. So in the absence of anything else, they still saw it as a privilege. We can blame screen time, we can blame lazy parenting, we can blame a lack of education. But where do you begin solving the problem? Because this, remember, this cohort of young boys will, half an hour's time, be school leavers. What's going to happen to that group? I'll tell you what's going to happen to that group. They're going to end up on the welfare. And by the way, we're going to be speaking a little later to a member of the House of Lords who gave an amazing speech about the cost of welfare versus how much money actually comes into the country, which kind of ties in with all of this, because that picture is getting worse as well. Why have white working class boys been left behind? Your thoughts, theories on that. The issue with Iran is still very much live, and your response, of course, to Golders Green and those terror, to me, I think we can call it, they're calling it a hate crime. These are terrorist attacks when you start setting fire to infrastructure and vehicles in this case. We're going to cross to Golders Green in a couple of moments' time and get the latest. 0344 499 1000.
The Crown is facing its gravest test in decades, and the royalty from Talk is your front row seat. With royal reputations under pressure and probing questions about public trust, we unpack every twist and revelation with the biggest names in the business. From the throne room at Buckingham Palace to a mansion in Montecito, we follow every royal ripple. Never miss a moment of The Crown in crisis. Subscribe to the royalty from Talk on the app or wherever you get your podcasts.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
This is Talk. It is 10 to 2. To your calls shortly. This in from Margaret in Birmingham. Starmer and Shabana Mahmood should visit Golders Green as soon as possible. Stand shoulder to shoulder with the Jewish community. Stop the usual word salad and show that they care. Well, we can cross live now to Golders Green. Talk reporter Samara Gill is there for us. Samara, what is the latest? Good afternoon.
Hi, Ian. Look, I mean, it is crazy scenes out here. It's been a hell of a day. There's been a lot going on, a lot of politicians dropping by. We had Wes Streeting earlier in the morning. We've just spoken to Priti Patel. We also had Chris Philp come through. Strangely, Sadiq Khan, yeah, I don't think he'd be welcome here, to be quite honest. I also think Keir Starmer, there are rumours that he might come. They've just cleared everyone out from behind us. I sort of heard just before you went to break that you were, saying, let's just call it for what it is, terrorism. And I think just now they are bringing in counter-terrorism. I think it's too little, too late in some regard. I've got a local resident here who is really fearing for his life. He's actually been the subject to another anti-Semitic attack at the supermarket that he works at. I mean, how are you feeling right now? This is pretty egregious, what's just happened behind us.
Yeah, it feels horrible. Anytime Jews can be attacked, nothing happens, and I don't see enough what the police is doing. They're not doing enough to protect the Jewish community, it feels like.
You said someone came in with a machete to your supermarket.
Not machete, but a massive, quite big knife around the size. They came in, they started asking questions about Israel, not showing the knife, and my workmates were like, wasn't going to answer him because they knew it's just causing here for trouble. Eventually they walked him out the shop and he goes, who do you support again? So I was like, I'm not going to talk to you about it. And he takes that knife, tries stabbing him. My workmate managed to take a trolley, managed to push him away. Eventually the guy ended up going and all the workers came with sticks just to thing, and he started running to his house. Eventually the police caught him. He was around a month in prison till the trial, and then he just got a 2-year suspended sentence and got released straight away.
And this is just daily life for you, isn't it now? This is daily life in Golders Green. Do you feel safer here or in Israel?
Israel, definitely. I was there a few months ago, and it feels much safer, even though there's sometimes rockets going over your head. It's still safer than over here with than rockets going above your head.
Al Jazeera was here, so was the BBC. You led a bit of a charge to get them out. Why did you do that?
Al Jazeera supports terrorism. On October 7th, they came into Israel with Hamas terrorists. They'll change what you say on the news. They'll make you look bad. We don't want them here. We don't want them in the Jewish community. They can report whatever they want, not over here. And anytime they'll be and I'm here, I will make sure to interrupt the interviews. I will not let them do an interview over here. Thank God they came here and I managed to kick them away.
There you go. That is a local resident who doesn't feel safe on these streets of Golders Green. I think that's the very sad state of Britain in 2026, where pretty much everyone I've spoken to today, and I've spoken to well over 50 people, do not feel like Britain is recognisable anymore for them. All of them said they feel safer in Israel, where they're being attacked by Iran with rockets. And it's just a sorry state of affairs. Yes, we're receiving all these politicians that are doorstepping and dropping in on here with their empty platitudes, but there's still no action from the Labour government. It's ridiculous, Ian.
Samara, thank you very much indeed. I mean, that's incredibly telling. The guest that Samara was talking to there, the guy from Golders Green, that he would feel safer, he felt safer in Israel than he did in North London. Israel's at war, and he feels safer there than here. Man alive. Let's go back to it. We'll talk to Nigel on this arson attack issue in just a moment. First, Ian down in London. On white working class boys, Ian, what have you got for us? Afternoon.
Afternoon, Ian.
Hiya.
Hold on. One thing that always amazed me with this, and this goes back for years, the reason why the teachers don't bother with the white kids and the white boys at school is, oh, don't worry, they're fodder for the armed services. Because if you go around the armed services, always was from the southwest, the northeast, and northwest, and like London, all the major cities, all the white young boys would look at it and say, I can't get a job, I can't do this. It's either I get into a life of crime or I join the armed services. Now, that availability, as you said before, is not there for the armed services. And yet, if we went to war, what's the first thing they do? Oh, Billy, Bob, Fred, yeah, you're in, right? But all the others, they wouldn't want to know. They'd all suddenly become conscious, or they'd say that my mum says I only like the right chicken McNuggets, and you don't serve them, and that's it.
But what is, I mean, this report does sort of suggest there's a family issue, not just an the education issue. is not where the emphasis should be. It should be on the family that aren't doing enough for young white working class boys. What's that all about?
Well, I'll change the sex for a second in the call. Hello, my name's Angela. I'm a single mother, and I did this and I did that. She was supposedly the big sort of thing that she had nothing. She was a single mum, and she's done all of this.
Yeah.
So basically, if she can do it, why isn't every other single?
Yeah. I mean, it's the idea that, I mean, look, circumstances do obviously guide the direction you go, and every now and again somebody pops wayward out the gene pool and goes in a direction that wouldn't be expected of their background. I think there's a lot of examples of that, but I hear what you're saying. Ian, thank you very much indeed for that. Great call from Ian in London. White working class boys, they're bottom of the ladder when it comes to education. What is going on? Nigel down in London, reference hate crime, terrorism in Golders Green. Nigel, afternoon to you.
Well, a very good afternoon to you. Funnily enough, I live about a half a mile from this, and I was there at 5:30 doing photographs this morning. But I was saying to your co-worker who kindly took my telephone call, I don't feel safe in this area, and I think the Metropolitan Police should hang their heads in shame. They don't protect the Jewish community. They've got no interest in protecting the Jewish community. We've seen them call out people in the past by saying, you look openly Jewish. Now, what's amazing for me, we've got a bit of a two-tier policing system going on today. We've got a borough commander who said it's not being treated as a terrorist incident but a hate crime, yet counter-terrorism police are investigating it. Just say for what it is.
Yeah.
If people in their own homes and the community are terrorised by what's going on, that to me is a definition of terrorism, when you've got ideological people attacking vehicles. I think what also has to be understood here, Ian, is simple. It doesn't matter who you are or what you are. People do not attack first responder vehicles, because I can tell you something about Hatstola. They have a base in Stoke Newington over that way, Stamford Hill.
Yeah.
And they always, both of the Hatstola ambulance stations, go out and they serve all demographics.
Yeah.
Jewish, Christian, Muslim, black, white, doesn't matter who you are. If you're in need of a first responder, they will assist you.
Sure.
And the police in Hackney will tell you that they frequently go out to deal with stabbings and shootings and road traffic collisions in that area. And it's shameful that anyone would attack a first responder vehicle.
Absolutely right. Nigel, thank you very much indeed for that. Nigel works as a photojournalist, hence the reason why he was out there early on the patch of where this happened. Why take so long to acknowledge this is clearly an act of terror in action, not just on specific vehicles, but symbolically on a community, a Jewish community in the UK in 2026. Let that settle. 0344 499 1000. This is Talk.
across the UK. On DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Yeah, good afternoon. Welcome back. Home of Common Sense. So 5 years after that key report on white working class boys being in the bottom rung of the educational ladder, guess what? Nothing has changed. Lord Sewell, who carried out this report, repeats his concerns, saying white working class boys from the poorest homes are still stuck at the bottom of the class. What's your thinking and your reasoning behind why that would still be the case half a decade later? Also this afternoon, Kemi Badenoch accusing the Prime Minister of a culture of cover-ups after the government delayed publicly disclosing the Iranian missile attack on the British territory of Diego Garcia. The government only confirmed the strike, which critics call a cover-up, over 30 hours after it occurred, and only once the US officials had also made it publicly, had publicly confirmed it as well. So you see the problem here that Keir Starmer's got. Also this afternoon, Britain's fears a rise in migrant boat crossings as that £475 million 3-year agreement funding with French patrols expires soon. Remember all that wonga we gave to the French? Yeah. They're running out of time. Talks are set to replace it with ended unresolved. The Home Secretary wants a new deal until 2029 to include performance clauses, which means that future funding is conditional on French interception success. Don't hold your breath. We'll have more on that as well. Everything you need to know, all the breaking news right here on Talk. 0344 499 1000. Richie says, perhaps, Richie's in Radcliffe-on-Trent, says, Labour should appoint a white boy education champion czar. Well, I think that's the kind of thing you would expect certainly a Labour government would do, wouldn't it? They're like a czar. All governments are like a czar. Why would you not for this? I mean, this is a seismic problem. Cliff in Berkshire, afternoon, Ian. It's a good job the young white boys have white privilege, or imagine how much worse it would be for them. Indeed. Yeah, up there, the white privilege. They're doing really well in that respect, clearly. Let's move then to this story of Keir Starmer facing accusations of a cover-up last night over that delayed public disclosure regarding the Iranian missile attack on a British overseas territory. We're talking Diego Garcia, of course. They acknowledged that it was an attempted strike, didn't actually hit there, but it was 30 hours after the event. Even the Americans had released details on it. Let's speak with Mark Almond, Director of Crisis Research Institute. Afternoon to you, Mike. Mark, good afternoon. Nice to have you with us. So what is going to look? I don't expect that, war is a running commentary every 2 minutes, and it would be a bit weird if Starmer just opened the Downing Street window and shouted out, "We've been hit." No one's expecting that, but it does seem quite a delay of 30 hours.
Yes, as you say, government or Ministry of Defence can't give a running commentary, but we do now live in a media environment, which means that if the government is silent when all sorts of rumours and reports are spreading on the internet and from news agencies outside Whitehall, people begin to think, is the government hiding something? Has something worse happened than what has been reported in the press? And so in order to maintain public confidence, I think the government has to be much faster on its feet and to give basic details. It doesn't want to give away secret information. If for instance, a missile was to hit a British base, you wouldn't necessarily want to tell you what it's done, what the damage is, because of course the Iranians would be very happy to hear that. It would be very important for them to know how accurate and how deadly their missiles were.
Indeed. In terms of this sort of ongoing threat, Starmer constantly telling us, look, we're not going to get involved in the war. I mean, that's beginning to sound, frankly, a bit daft, isn't it? I mean, we are involved, whatever level we can argue that. But if you ask the average Iranian on Tehran High Street, I'm pretty sure they will say, no, the Brits are definitely involved. They're not our friends.
Yeah, we face the problem that we may not want to be involved in the war, but the war wants to involve us. From day one, in fact, if you remember, the British base at Akrotiri on Cyprus was attacked probably by Hezbollah, the allies of Iran, just over the sea in Lebanon. And so the government has been rather caught by surprise repeatedly. It constantly says, we had it even this morning from Steve Reed, or yesterday morning, I should say, from Steve Reed, the housing minister who was put out in front of the cameras rather than a Minister of Defence, saying that we were going to develop contingency plans. Well, surely you have contingency plans before the problem arises rather than when you have to react to it. And of course, now the issue is, if the Iranians have a missile that can make its way to Diego Garcia, if it was fired from northwest Iran, it could make its way to London. Now, this would not be a nuclear missile. Fortunately, the Iranians don't have nuclear warheads, but clearly it would create a much more difficult situation if you feel that you have an enemy who is able to target you with potentially, for instance, nuclear waste in the warhead, which would cause a radiation scare. It would, not many people would be killed by such a missile hitting the ground, but a lot of people would be very worried that they have ingested carcinogenic material. So there are issues that the government really needs to think about, and also to inform the public about what it's going to do, what its contingency plans are. Do you know where your nearest bomb shelter is?
Well, that's what I thought was strange when Steve Reed said that yesterday. There was no, and his line was no specific assessment that the Iranians are targeting the UK. And I found that quite disturbing to hear a senior member of the government to say that. Firstly, why is there no assessment of that? Would that not be an ongoing thing, like a litmus test by the hour almost?
Yeah. I mean, even if you had a positive assessment, there was nothing that they could do that really would threaten us.
Yeah, indeed.
You would want to be able to do that, and then to be able to say, look, we've had a serious assessment and there are dangers to people around Iran, but not to us. Although you'd also want to say, but we are now taking steps to ensure that we have air defences, anti-missile defences, that would mean that we would have a very good chance of shooting down such missiles as, say, for instance, Israel has shown vis-a-vis many more simultaneous Iranian attacks.
And if the government had been asleep at the wheel on this particular point, one would like to think that the Diego Garcia attempted attack would have certainly addressed that. That would be the point when you'd say, well, hang on a sec, this is British territory. I know the Americans use that area, but this is British. It would not be too much overthinking to suggest that it could be because it's British that it was targeted. So why would there not be, you know, I don't want to say all hell breaking loose, but whatever the MOD equivalent of that is?
Yeah. Well, we've seen two things, haven't we? We've seen that the Iranians have attacked, as I say, Akrotiri, British base in Cyprus, as well as Diego Garcia. We've seen them attack the Gulf states very close by. And they can't really attack the United States. They certainly don't have missiles that could reach the United States. But what they're trying to do is to make life awkward for America's allies through the energy blockade, and then particularly to attack the Gulf states who produce so much of that energy that they're stopping travelling to the world, but also countries like Britain, I suspect, are seen as a soft target. You see, the government has, I'm not saying the government should have announced we're going to declare war on Iran, but you would have thought they would have themselves issued a kind of ultimatum. If you do this one more time, then, you know, Britain will come in fully into the war, insofar as we have military assets that can be deployed, which is another question. I think what all this has shown is how hollow the Navy is, how hollow our armed forces are. And really, even if President Trump's announcement a few hours ago that he thinks there's a positive development that could lead to a ceasefire, even if that happens, I don't think we can then go back to sleep. We really have to think, how do we prepare for some future crisis, and to be much better prepared for it, rather than just saying, oh, thank God that's gone away.
Indeed. Mark, we will speak again, I'm sure. Thank you for your time, sir. Mark Ullman, he's the director of the Crisis Research Institute. Comments on that as well. I mean, if they're firing off rockets towards British territory, isn't that, you know, I'm not a military person, but isn't that the point when you go, oh, yeah, I think maybe we can probably up the alert a tad. This is their direction of travel, right? Back to lots of other issues we're talking about as well. Working class white boys, Brad in Cambridge, in respect of the poor academic achievement of young white boys. One thing I haven't heard mentioned yet is the fact that they are taught that their history is toxic and responsible for all of the world's ills. Black lads are given an entire month solely dedicated to the praise of black history, but the heroes and role models of white kids are cancelled. It can't help, Ian. Spot on, which is why I kind of resist the idea, thank you, Brad, for that, that this is only about home life, because that's essentially what our two guests at the top alluded to. This was not, the emphasis was not on schools, but on the home and circumstances around the home other issues that clearly mean that the emphasis on education, or even just, you know, reading a little bit, not being on a screen all the time, having understanding about the importance of education, all of that stuff is gone by the wayside. But I would confidently argue there are other factors, if not overtly in the classroom, but kind of around us. There's sort of other factors around us that young kids would digest. It doesn't take long these days. Get the internet and gaming, even if your kid is not a screen addict, stuff just gets learned in that respect. I think you would definitely kind of absorb some of that vibe that, yeah, white privilege, you've been the problem, your race has been the problem, you are the issue, etc. And all the people that you thought were role models, turns out they're not role models. Forget them, they're all horrible people. There's a bit of that going on. Ian is in Bridgend on this point. Ian, what are you thinking? Hi.
Hello, Ian.
Hello.
Yes, the issue about white working class males, nowhere is this more apparent, I would suggest, than here in Wales, where, you know, white working class boys make up a far bigger proportion of the population than in England.
Yeah, true.
We have a government here in Wales that gives enhanced educational grants to non-white teacher trainers. And, you know, how is that then setting a role model to get more white working class boys coming forward as teachers? Crazy.
Yeah. I mean, it doesn't, you don't even have to be sort of an educationalist, do you, to work out that would, you know, at some point is going to cause a problem.
Exactly, yeah. And I'm sure this illegal, what they do, you know, it's been tested elsewhere and found to be illegal, yet it still proceeds here in Wales. It's a terrible thing. And when you think, you know, the Welsh education system, we hear about the Scottish education system is faulted. We are now at the bottom of the list in every respect in Great Britain. Yet we used to have the highest attainment in Britain, you know, up until a couple of years ago. So anybody that says devolution is a good thing for your country, they are just talking rubbish, you know. So be warned for you know, any suggestion of devolution in England.
Be warned. Good message. Ian, thank you very much indeed for that. Lovely to speak as well. Ian in Bridgend. Let's get a voice note on this from Darren in Warsaw.
Free the white working class boys. I do remember, but his name escapes me, it was a few years ago, and a businessman wanted to sponsor 2 white working class kids to go to university, and there wasn't a university in the country would take him up on the offer, not one, because he stressed they had to be white working class boys, and not one university in this country would take his money. There's your problem. Cheers, mate.
Darren, thank you for that. Just to clarify what that story was, it was 2 private schools that defended their decision not to accept a benefactor's offer of scholarships for disadvantaged white boys. This was Winchester and Dulwich colleges declined the offer, reportedly to be worth over £1 million by a former pupil from both of those schools, Professor Sir Brian Thwaites. The schools said they do not want to put ethnic restrictions on who can benefit from their financial help. So Sir Brian says he's now looking for state schools to accept the offer. It's interesting, isn't it? Because who was it recently? Who was the artist that gave some money to young black kids to... I've kind of got Stormzy in my head. It was Stormzy, wasn't it? Yeah. Who, essentially for what sounds like a very similar thing, that you wanted to assist young black kids getting into a better form. I think it was a Cambridge initiative. And I don't know whether, I'm loath to say it was an identical situation because I don't really know, but it was certainly in the ballpark of Stormzy wanted to help young black kids from, I assume, a similar background. And in this case, we had Sir Brian Thwaites, who wanted to help disadvantaged white kids. I suppose the only thing, it does give the schools a bit of a headache, doesn't it? Because they've then got to find the disadvantaged white kid. And then they've got to do their own research. And are you more disadvantaged than that white kid? Do we give the money to that kid or to that? I'm not saying it's straightforward, but it does seem odd that you can offer £1 million to essentially want to assist a group that is proven to be one of the most, or the most disadvantaged white boys, white working class boys. and there's nothing you can do about that. Really? 0344 499 1000. Carl is in Liverpool on this very story. Carl, what have you got for us? Hi.
Good afternoon, Ian.
Hi, what are you thinking?
Yeah, I think, like, obviously we've got a lot of DEI in the schools and stuff, and, you know, with all this refugees welcome and blah, 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 this, and all the focus being taken off British kids to encourage, obviously, more ethnicities, different cultures.
Yep.
I mean, there's a school local to me that's cancelled Easter already, you know, the Easter celebrations and stuff, because obviously it would be, I don't know whether it was rude or something to their culture, but it's not culturally, you know, the same. It's just crazy, but it's been going on for a long time. I told the lady I spoke to earlier, my brother used to play for an academy, big academy up north, and back when the academy started going into foreign-born players, young teenagers, my brother was a goalkeeper at the time, and the goalkeeper coach come up to him and said, you know, to my dad, you know, we don't think he's going to have a chance, because obviously now we've entered different markets for different players and stuff. So, you know, it's not only in school, it's on the football level as well, you know, from early ages.
Yeah. I mean, I would say in the world of football, that is absolutely an area where there is not a problem with black recruitment, right?
No, well, if you look, I think I've seen it on Twitter, the up-and-coming French team, I think under 18s, they're all black.
Yeah,
you know?
There's definitely not. Certainly at team selection, I know there was a bit of an issue at the weekend over some alleged racism at one match, but generally speaking, I don't think many black players are being told they can't join the football team because they're black.
No, but we've seen it with the police as well, though. We're recruiting foreign, foreign people from different cultures and stuff, different ethnicities and stuff. So white people from kids to adults are being frozen out of jobs and stuff. And it's the same with the military. And, like, you know, we're part of the Commonwealth, and we had lads coming over, joining the military, and loads of them just admitted it was just for a passport, you know? So it's just, it's everywhere. And unfortunately for us as white people, you know, everyone talks about racism and, you know, how we're fascists and stuff. It's the white community that's under attack, and the Jewish community. You know, we're not the ones throwing petrol bombs and ambulances and causing chaos on weekends. That's not us. That's, you know,
we're living in a bit of an upside down world, and I guess, you know, years ago when maybe, you know, for some groups it wasn't a pleasant place to be, and people thought, we better balance this out a little bit because, you know, some kids are getting, you know, a horrendous time. We all understood that. No one wants to see a kid singled out because of the colour of their skin. But what seems to have happened, no one's bothered to re-look at that story and say, well, actually, there's now, partly as a result maybe of that, you've got another group left behind. And your endeavours may well have been admirable back in the day, but now you've got young white working class boys, they're left behind. Now, surely you'd put all emphasis you could to try and address that. Listen, Carl, I've got to run, but thank you. Great call. 0344 499 1000. Karen in North Wales says, I think that the breakdown of the family unit has contributed to this. When I started school, I could read and write, which was considered normal. When my kids started school, I was criticised for teaching them basic literacy and numeracy skills. Yeah, there's stuff like, you know, there's lots going on there. Kids going to school, starting school, still wearing nappies, not knowing what cutlery was. I mean, how'd you get to that age? I mean, you're four and a half-ish when you start school. You don't know what cutlery is. You're still wearing a nappy. You've got a dummy in your gob, which you can't function without. 0344 that's just the teachers. 0344 499 1000. Our lines are open. This is Talk.
crown is facing its gravest test in decades, and the royalty from Talk is your front row seat. With royal reputations under pressure and probing questions about public trust, we unpack every twist and revelation with the biggest names in the business. From the throne room at Buckingham Palace to a mansion in Montecito, we follow every royal ripple. Never miss a moment of The Crown in Crisis. Subscribe to The Royalty from Talk on the app or wherever you get your podcasts.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Sorry, we had a microphone issue there. Unfortunately, Dave, who's our tech op, fell asleep, which is kind of a bit weird, frankly, isn't it? But then he was on the source at about midday, so could be that. Just say 0344 499 1000. This from Natasha, who says, Labour will never appoint a white boy czar. They loathe them in their weird world. They think they are privileged. They will only ever help people with brown or black skin. Do you know what? The white privilege thing is so laughable now. I keep hearing sort of fairly worthy, sanctimonious, navel-gazing, sort of slightly more to the left commentators talking almost just factually about it. You know, well, the thing with white privilege is, you've got to remember, you know, white privilege is this. It's such an undefined, anti-intellectual position to take. And the argument sort of goes that even the kids we're talking about, white working class boys, even those kids have an advantage over a black or a brown person by dint of the colour of their skin. Now, I've no idea where this crazy argument might come from. Sure, you may well be subject to racism. I don't think that is and nobody's going to defend that. I'm not sure that's the measure of the white privilege thing. I don't think that is the definition of white privilege, is that you're not subject to racism as in somebody shouts something out in the street. In terms of the workplace, in terms of, you know, all the other factors, the idea that some poor white working class boy who's got absolutely naff all, had no guidance, no great parental direction in life, therefore no education, and by the time that kid is about 9 or 10, that direction of travel is almost sealed. I mean, it's not completely insurmountable, but it's kind of like a big percentage there. You're not going to reverse it. But don't worry, because you've still got privilege. I mean, is anyone saying this crap with a straight face? Sean is down in London. Sean, what have you got for us? Good afternoon.
Hi, Ian. How you doing?
I'm good, thank you. What are you thinking?
Well, I'm a former school teacher. Yep. I worked, really got my hands dirty in my time in terms of working in inner London schools, and also taught a lot of expelled kids in pupil referral units.
Okay.
And but my time there is, a lot of your speakers beforehand have all touched on points and they're all relevant. But there's one thing I will come to. One thing that's not been mentioned is the curriculum that doesn't suit the majority of working class boys, and that's where. But we have this fallacy that English education is the best in the world. No, it's not. I'm telling you now, no, it's not. I've taught in America. It's far better in the States. Maybe if you're talking about Oxford and Cambridge, maybe, but certainly not bog standard, comprehensive thing. It's so nice, this fallacy, like the Emperor's New Clothes in teaching. Yeah. That it's brilliant and we're wonderful. No, it's not. One thing I will say, though, is that it's the culture of the teachers. I mean, I have ended up quitting teaching, not because of the kids. I taught with the naughtiest of the naughtiest. Yep. Unfortunately, future prison fodder. But I could get on the level with them and I could deal with them. I'm a white, as you can hear, working class fella. Like PE teachers are quite alpha male. And while you might butt heads with these lads to start off with, before you know it, you got great with them. And I'm talking all kids from different colours, different backgrounds, because there was just that, because there's not many straight alpha male teachers in the industry no more.
No, there's not.
I'm just going to call a spade here. In primary school, the majority of teachers tend to be homosexual, and they're quite overt. Good luck to them, but that's just the demographic.
That's interesting. I didn't even know that.
I'm not saying all. I'm not saying all people start losing their minds. I'm not saying all, but a lot are. Again, because maybe they have that more nurturing aspect to them, and good luck. And if you are white, straight, and if your political view or your outlook on life is right of centre, you are not welcomed in that industry. You are not welcomed. It's very much. I've got a few friends who are policemen. It's very similar to where the police are going now.
Yeah.
There is a political motive, and that was, during Brexit. Oh my God. If you're a teacher and went, I think we should leave, you would be absolutely blacklisted.
That's extraordinary, isn't it? Because you want to leave a trading block. That makes you somehow a bad person.
My stepson, who's mixed race, come out of school one day when he was 14, and he went to me, what did you vote? Did you vote Leave or Remain? I said, well, I vote Leave. And he went, why is that? I was explained how I felt working class people being undermined, undercut. And he went, oh, my French teacher, who was actually French, a black French teacher, said everyone who voted Leave is racist. And they're sitting in front of the class espousing this to 20 or 25 children. And I went into the school and I demanded an apology. But going back to the white working class boys thing, no one gives a damn about them. No one gives a damn. And I was in a South London school where at lunchtime, and it was predominantly ethnic minorities, probably 80% and probably about 60% Afro-Caribbean. There was a black boys club at lunchtime, and it was only for black boys. So you can imagine, and all the kids got on great together, but you can imagine, just say there's Tom and then there's Jerome. And Jerome goes, I'm off to Black Boys Club now. And Tom goes, well, can I come? No, you're not allowed. And the teacher will go, no, you're not allowed. And it was disgusting.
Even though Jerome is in the majority?
Yes.
Which just makes it a bit... if Jerome was in the minority, like the Black Police Officers Association, you can understand once upon a time that if you were a black guy in the police, in the Met, in 1978, I'd imagine that would have been a bit tricky for you. But it's now 2026, right?
Totally. And the other thing is, you're talking about young boys. They're like lumps of clay. You can forge them in such different ways. So creating that division at 13 or 14-year-old was just disgusting.
Of course it is.
So, Tom would be left out in the playground on his Todd while all his mates or the majority of his mates are up in the classroom playing PlayStation or whatever.
Unbelievable.
And eventually it got binned, because I think quite a few teachers were going, look, this is just wrong.
Yep.
And I dare to think of the rhetoric that was being spoken to them by those teachers in that room about modelling them. But again, it's just the white working class boys are just neglected. And another thing I was just going to quickly touch on, because I don't want to go on too long, was the curriculum. A lot of white working class boys want to be tradesmen. That's not catered for in the English education system.
Yeah.
Unless you're an academic,
you're not 100%. And do you know what?
You're not welcomed.
And schools and education departments, you'll know more about this than me, Sean, have been lying to us, because every time we say, look, what about vocational careers? What about if somebody is good, they want to work in a nail bar, they want to be a mechanic, focus on it, major on it, go for it, encourage it. There's no point in trying to teach Tim double physics, because it's never going to fit. It's a stupid thing to do. And they always go, oh yeah, we're doing it now, we're encouraging kids to if they don't want to go to university, they don't have to, but they're not really encouraging it.
Totally. It's just politicians give their waffle. They'll start some vocational schemes every so. But it's the grassroots rhetoric that's been spoken in class. And one more story, and I'll leave you, was I taught the kids, it was basically the bomb squad of the school, the naughty boys who were mainly white boys in there as well, who were just dustbined in. And I was the PE teacher, so I could line tame them for an hour or two. And my thing was, right, I'm going to teach you some practical skills, so writing letters, writing CVs. And I had another teacher in the corner room, typical white, liberal, wokey, just Clapham-esque. I just done my head in. Anyway, he's sitting there doing his own work, and I'm telling the boys, I went, right, what do you want to be when you get older? Not I want to be a rapper, I want to be a footballer, something really achievable for you all. And we're going around the room, some were saying, I want to be a bricklayer. One of the kids, Ronnie, and he was a very naughty boy, he used to terrorise the local estate. He put up his hand and said, I want to be a plasterer, like my dad. And his teacher then butted in and went, oh, Ronnie, you could do so much better with yourself.
Wow.
And I just looked at the teacher, I thought, you absolute idiot. Not only is that kid who's normally really naughty, said something really positive, and his dad does it as well.
Yes.
He completely sandbagged him.
Yeah.
It was horrific.
There's also, if you're a good plasterer, there's a lot of money in it as well, which is just another point.
I bet his dad was earning more than that teacher.
Of course he was. You mentioned, we've not got long, Sean, you said you got out of teaching. What do you do now?
Believe it or not, I'm not going to say, if you don't mind, because I work in an industry which is still very wokey.
All right, okay.
It's a lot better paid.
Have you gone woke on us, Sean? Is that what you're trying to say?
No, God, no.
Good. Glad to hear it, mate. Great to talk. Sean, thank you for that. Nice to hear a kind of working class voice, formerly, sadly, of the teaching profession. That was Sean down there in London. Just gone 2:30. This is Talk.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
It is indeed Talk. 25 to 3. How often do we talk about the ballooning wealth, the unsustainable nature of welfare? The figures don't get any better. Sometimes you have to drill down. They don't even publish this stuff on a daily basis, it seems. It's a story that we've just got used to. We're pretty skint. The money is going into areas that are just growing unrecognisably by the week. British borrowing reached a near record 14.3 billion in February. This is a big challenge to the Chancellor, of course. The high figure, driven by elevated public spending and rising debt interest payments, reflects the government's revenue shortfall. Let's have a listen to this. We're going to speak to the man himself in just a second on this very issue, speaking in the House of Lords just last week, Lord Elliott.
According to page 70 of the OBR's report, total welfare spending will rise this year, just this year, by £18 billion, further contributing to the national debt. This £18 billion increase is the equivalent to the entire annual budget of NASA, an organisation that is literally sending people around the moon this year. Thanks to the work of NASA, we have GPS navigation, satellite weather forecasting, camera phone sensors, infrared thermometers, cordless power tools, and even memory foam. Technologies to improve the lives of billions of people and which underpin trillions of dollars of economic activity.
Well, let's speak with Lord Matthew Elliott, Conservative peer, who was making those comments. Matthew, good afternoon to you.
Good afternoon. Thank you for having me on the show.
It's a pleasure. Well, to coin a phrase, we're screwed.
The sums aren't looking good. Now, I was talking about the spring statement there, and the figures have gone up hugely. So welfare spend alone since the forecast in the budget compared to the spring statement just a fortnight ago is an extra £18 billion. It's a huge amount of money.
So when we've got this disparity between, the amount of money the government collects, all very simple stuff when you explain it this way, and the amount of money they spend, and in this case on welfare, there's a problem, and there is an irredeemable problem. Is that fair?
There's a really big problem. We're seeing already the debt interest repayments going up, and that's before the effect, of course, of the war going on in Iran and the effect that will have. So that's becoming a bigger burden. We're also seeing as well other things having to be cut. So, for example, with the £18 billion increase in welfare, £8 billion of that is the non-pensioner costs, if you like. And with that £8 billion, you could fund roughly sort of 900,000 new apprenticeships. So your last caller talking about, where are the apprenticeship schemes for plasterers, for example? You could actually fund those if you put some of that money into training rather than welfare.
You previously, of course, were with the Taxpayers Alliance.
Yes.
In fact, I think I'm right in saying you're the founder of the Taxpayers Alliance.
Yes, I am.
Indeed. Now, of course, this is the kind of stuff you dealt with all the time. Finding yourself in Parliament now, I mean, is that a kind of double-edged sword? Because you can, look, I can actually talk to the people that matter and maybe I'll get a greater hearing than I did before. I don't know. Or is it more frustrating in some respects?
It's actually really good to have that platform to be able to bring up these points after budgets and spring statements and ask questions about them, because I think there's always that role for a taxpayer watchdog from whatever side of politics you're on. It must be said that, I say this, the last Conservative government also wasted money, just like the current Labour government is wasting money. So you always see that watchdog finding how to spend money better.
Every time we do a debate on this, and I know we can all be armchair prime ministers or armchair chancellors, and everyone has a list. If I was prime minister, I'd get rid of this and I'd cut the budget for that, etc. And constantly, whenever we look at areas where there is an extraordinary amount of waste, the answer that usually comes back from the Treasury is, well, it sounds like, £2 million sounds like a lot of money, but actually in the grander scale, it's not a lot of money. But of course, I would counter that, and I hope reasonably, by saying, well, OK, but there's lots of these £2 million out there. In fact, there's an awful lot of them out there, and they're not all just 2 million quid. And if you add them all together, it is a lot of money. What is as far as you can tell, what is the resistance to common sense economics that the rest of us can see? Something happens when you get into government, doesn't it? Like a fairy comes down and injects you with some kind of serum that removes basic common sense. What goes on there?
Well, if I could wave a magic wand and do one thing, it would be bring in greater transparency. And when I set up the Taxpayers Alliance over 20 years ago now, it was the early days of the Freedom of Information Act. And it must be said, actually, more information came out of government then than it does now, 20 years later. It must be said, civil servants are much better at dodging the FOI request than not actually publishing the figures. So if we have transparency there, then taxpayers up and down the country and journalists, what have you, can really dig through the figures and expose the waste in real time.
Indeed. I think Tony Blair said it was one of his greatest regrets, wasn't it, introducing the Freedom of Information Act, because it meant pesky people like you, Matthew, could start getting some answers to things.
Right.
But as you rightly say, they've sort of refined their responses, and redaction seems to be the national sport over there at Civil Service HQ. It is interesting when you look at some basic areas of life. I mean, I'll come to the welfare thing in a moment. Migrant hotels is an obvious one, and I've long argued that what is the best way and the most convincing way to have a conversation about immigration. Of course, it's a fairly delicate area because the left lose their minds and tell you that it's a bit racist to say that, or that's not a very nice thing to say, etc. So you have to try and circumnavigate all of that. I've long thought, Matthew, that the most powerful argument at the moment, we can talk about social cohesion all we like, but it's actually the economics of it. I mean, the economics are there for all to see. 6 million quid a day, 2 billion a year. It's arguably more than that. Then you get into the eventual reliance on welfare, all sorts of other issues associated with it. We are talking jaw-dropping telephone numbers here. And yet that argument is never really advanced, not in a way that seems to stick with any politician that could do something about it.
It's not. And the other thing as well is, of course, when they talk about growth and the growth in GDP, they talk about the overall figure rather than GDP per capita.
Yes.
So at the moment, growth is about 1%. Population is going up by about 0.5%. When you add that in, it's basically stagnation, not getting any growth whatsoever. And I just wish when they thought about things like the migrant hotels, there's a bit of common sense in there. You know, at the moment, you have a situation where you have homeless people within the UK, and somehow there isn't the money to house them, and yet migrants are going to four-star hotels. That just, in a common sense point of view, doesn't seem to be fair.
Indeed. And back to the issue of welfare then. So we're collecting, you know, X amount in income tax, but spending what seems to be far more on welfare. You don't have to be an economist, you don't have to be a politician to work out that this is square pegs and round hole territory. Yeah. It's going to get a lot worse unless somebody does something about it. What's the answer to this, Matthew? Where do we go with this? Because, you know, we can joke about it and go, oh, look how much we're spending. I mean, this is deadly serious.
The answer is to get people back into employment. Yeah. And if you look at the gap between the current employment levels and where they were before COVID, there's about a 2 million person gap. So you need to get about 2 million people back into work. Now, there are only sort of 700,000 job vacancies out there. So we need businesses to create more jobs and create more training opportunities and actually give people those opportunities. And then, of course, you need to think about the wider business environment. When you're increasing things like employers' NICs, or when you're bringing in the Employment Rights Bill, or when you're increasing the minimum wage for young people for their first jobs, all of these things actually contribute to higher unemployment. So the government needs to think about the wider business environment.
Indeed. The fact that we're talking, Matthew, will quite literally fire up the sizzling left of the political spectrum, who will be calling in going, I'll tell you why, Lord Matthew Elliott, we're skint. Brexit, that's why we're skint. Now, this is an argument you would have had probably in a pub, in a dinner party, at work. I mean, you can have it any day of the week. It's like I have fun with it these days, but bearing in mind you were the chief executive of Vote Leave, so that you've got skin in the game on this one. What is your kind of go-to answer when that one comes up, that we've lost all our money because we left the EU?
So my go-to answer is this. We've had faster growth than our competitors within the EU. So faster growth than Germany, Italy, since almost as fast as France since we left the EU. And actually, we're trading more with the EU now than we were when we were inside the EU. So on all of those metrics, we're doing better. And all of these facts you often sort of see out there from different universities saying there's like a sort of 8% gap between where we should be. They're based on a model whereby they assume we would have grown as fast as the USA or as fast as Estonia. And of course, they have low energy costs, they've got flat tax in Estonia. We don't have those things.
Indeed. Matthew, let's speak again. Great to have you on with us. Thank you. Lord Matthew Elliott, Conservative peer, President of the Jobs Foundation. He was founder of the Taxpayers Alliance, founder of Big Brother Watch, Chief Executive of Vote Leave during the EU referendum. He's got a big old CV right across the board there. Thank you to Matthew. Over to you on that one, 0344 499 1000. I don't think we can ever tire, really, of pondering that question of how we address the welfare bill. And almost every day we come on air, there's another, again, it's one of those stories that you'd think would be front pages every day. This is so serious, it's so expensive, it's completely unsustainable. You can't keep those numbers going and think you're going to get away with it, and it's going to get more expensive. So if you go in, you don't have to be an economist, you don't have to be left-wing or right-wing to go, this is bonkers, mate. This is just economic gibberish. It can't carry on. So what is the answer to the ballooning welfare bill? Budget. 0344 499 1000. That's where you'll find us. You can message 87222. Back with more of your calls coming next on Talk.
Crown is facing its gravest test in decades, and the royalty from Talk is your front row seat. With royal reputations under pressure and probing questions about public trust, we unpack every twist and revelation with the biggest names in the business. From the throne room at Buckingham Palace to a mansion in Montecito, we follow every royal ripple. Never miss a moment of The Crown in crisis. Subscribe to The Royalty from Talk on the app or wherever you get your podcasts.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Philip says, Lord above puts it into view when we can afford to run a mission to Mars with the money we pay in 1 year on welfare. It really does, doesn't it, when you hear what Lord Elliot said in the House of Lords. The budget of NASA, for goodness sake. Darryl in Lincoln says, the caller Sean, the ex-teacher, is so spot on about the current situation. I left the police because I felt I didn't fit anymore, basically because I was straight, white bloke, working class, bit right of centre, proud of the flag, etc. It's not an environment now for my sort of person anymore. But this goes for... Thank you, Darryl, for that. And you're not the first and won't be the last to make that point. It's in institutional areas of life, isn't it? Jobs that are essentially government-related, like civil service jobs in different forms, teaching, policing. I go back to the guest we had on Friday, who was the former diplomat working at the Foreign Office. Now, he's a non-white guy, and he left after 10 years for the very same reasons. And all of these institutionalised areas have kind of institutionalised themselves into a kind of pervasive and dangerous, ultimately toxic groupthink, where someone somewhere, and Lord knows, you know, you could never find, like patient zero, you could never find the first person that said, no, we need an awareness course of this, or a course for that, or we need an enlightenment, and make sure that everybody is on the same page on this issue or that issue. Like, well, mate, it's a workplace. What are you doing with your issues? Why are you bringing in critical race theory people? Why are you celebrating National Afro Day? Why are you doing that kind of malarkey in the workplace? I mean, nothing wrong with an after-work club. You want to get together on a social, go nuts, you know, get a Beano to Margate going on a coach. All go down there for the weekend. You can have a love-in as much as you like. You can talk everything from afros to white skin, black skin, brown. You can do all of that, everything. Fantastic. Great. Not in the workplace. Why is this in the workplace? This is the problem, right? This is the issue, that we've allowed this to become, the workplace is kind of like a surrogate lifestyle for people. It's become a kind of a second parent where clubs and little splinter groups are able to form. And in fact, not able to form, they're encouraged and often funded by the very department they're in. I mean, the man we spoke to on Friday, he was in the Foreign Office, for God's sake. He's going, why are they doing this? We're meant to be solving wars. And they're worried about Equality Day, having a National Equality Day. We've worked out that the department down the corridor has only got 28% of gay people in it. So we want to work on that if you can. So there's anybody who wants to volunteer to be a bit gay for a couple of weeks, then you can join that department. It will do our statistics a right old favour. It's this kind of almost mentalness that's allowed itself to sweep its way around places like policing and teaching are two obvious examples, and the Foreign Office. 0344 499 1000. We're about to speak to Matt in Cheshire. Before we do, it's the Voice of Doom, day 13. It's a mystery voice, but you're looking for a politician. Could be left-wing, could be right-wing. They could be dead or alive, young or old, male or female. Who is this?
There's hardly any experience.
And we'll hear that again.
There's hardly any experience.
And again.
There's hardly any experience.
If you think you know, don't phone in, just message 87222, 87222. Fingers crossed, somebody comes up with the right answer and we can reveal all after the news. 87222 if you know who this is.
There's hardly any experience.
It's not Rory Stewart. That's quite a common guess we've had of late. It's not Rishi Sunak either. It's not Gloria Hunniford that somebody guessed the other day as well, surprisingly. Let's go to Matt in Cheshire. White working class boys. Matt, what have you got for us? Afternoon.
Very good afternoon, Ian.
Hi.
Can I also echo Sean was excellent and
it was great,
sort of
wasn't it?
a real eye opener. He should write a
book.
Some kind of prospectus on
Yeah.
revealing the entire thing.
Trouble is, I wonder whether people gravitate to, in his case, the teaching profession. Do they gravitate to those professions because they already have those views? I mean, I'm sure there are other Seans out there, but, you know, most teaching people I meet, and I know a couple, they're mates, you know, and in the family as well, they're usually very much of the left.
It's probably slightly
Which is not
different up
illegal in
north,
itself,
Ian.
but if it informs too much of what you do.
I've sort of covered some of it in my thoughts, if that's okay. Ian.
Yeah, fire away.
So I, like you, was a working class lad, and I got a great school education, regardless of all the social factors.
Yeah.
Conservatives, until recent years, have been public school boys at Oxbridge attendees. Labour despise the working class and think they have a right to own and control them, as they believe they are the bourgeoisie. Neither have the ability, intelligence or personnel to address this issue, and Labour's obsession with race and identity has led them to purposely victimise and demonise white men and boys generally. I know how to speak to white working class lads because I was one, and it's not so tough. But the appalling and useless political class would not know where to begin. To summarise, Liberals in both Labour and Conservatives have spent so much time grovelling to minorities and obsessing over gender equality that they have created another problem due to their extremism. And they and the managerial and corporate types are so arrogant and conceited they can never shut up to allow those that may know better to help. And finally, Labour will rejoice at this in private. Labour want white people to know this, so it shows their unstable and hateful ideology is winning over the majority. And when all is said and done, this is purposeful race-based neglect and racism. And I am really passionate about this because this is something I've seen for 20, 30 years, even when I was in my 20s.
Do you think, it seems to have grown, that two things seem to be happening, Matt. This problem seems to have, you know, continually grown over the years, but we're also now living in a world where we have different views that gain a profile that they didn't before. The obvious example is Reform UK. They talk a lot about getting rid of this old guff and changing things, and DEI, all of that nonsense is going in the bin. But overarchingly, has it got worse, or is it beginning to get better?
It's obviously got Blair's long march into the institutions, COVID purposefully using it to batter everyone with DEI and ESG. It's a purposeful, long-winded European Marxist tactic to break up all white communities in Britain, and everything we've seen is being done purposefully, and we're all the victims of it. And Blair started it, and where we are today is it's not the end of it, but we're probably 2/3 of the way into it.
Sure.
And hopefully reform will rip it all to shreds.
Well, I mean, that is... any government that comes in has a big old to-do list. They can't, you know, they're often surprised at how much resistance there is to their to-do list. Will reform be different should they succeed at the next election? Let's get a voice note on this issue. White working class boys. This comes from Ed.
Hi, Ian. I just wanted to share my experience that somebody at my company left and was taking a job with the Home Office. And as a reference, they rang up and all they were interested in was, were you aware that this person followed any people such as Tommy Robinson or Andrew Tate, basically right-wing figures? That's all they were interested in. They didn't. So I asked them, well, what about extremists such as some of the views people like Jeremy Corbyn might have and others? And that was just absolutely shut down. So they're being filtered at that stage. This is before they've even taken the job. There's a filtering exercise going on, and yeah, that's what's happening. All right, great show anyway. Cheers, Ian.
Good man, Ed. Thank you very much indeed. Yeah, that doesn't surprise me at all. I can completely believe, you know, who's he following on Twitter? Who's he looking at on the YouTube? You can just see who's he friends with on Facebook. You can see those questions coming. And of course, there is an explicit agenda in that, because this is not about a general question of the kind of stuff you might be into. This is very specific. Thank you, Ed, for that. Voice of Doom. Have a listen to the voice.
There's hardly any...
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Good afternoon. Yes, welcome back. It is the home of common sense. We're talking about that report into white working class boys. 5 years on from the initial report, nothing has changed. It's still as bad as it was out there. Lord Sewell, he's in charge of this report, repeats his concern that white working class boys from the poorest homes are stuck at the bottom of the class. And you know what? No one's talking about it because nobody really cares. What is the reasoning behind it as far as you can ascertain, and how do we change direction for these guys and the lowest rungs of the educational ladder? Also this afternoon, Kemi Badenoch accusing Keir Starmer of a culture of cover-ups. This is after the Iranian missile attack on British territory of Diego Garcia. The government confirmed the strike, but only after 30 hours it occurred, and only once after the US officials had publicly confirmed it. What is going on in that department? And when it comes to migrant crossings, Britain fears a rise in boat crossings as that £475 million contract with the French is coming to an end. There are now talks to replace it. The Home Secretary wants a new deal to run for the next 3 years to include a performance-related caveat. So if the French don't do the job, they don't get paid. Well, that sounds like the right direction of travel. I don't know why we're paying this amount of money in the first place. That's a whole other story. We'll have more on that as well. Everything you need to know, all the breaking news right here on Talk. 0344 499 1000. Quick message from Georgina in Cambridge. Says, my daughter is a primary school teacher. She's still an ECT in her first 2 years of teaching. She most definitely isn't on the left and has to keep her mouth shut regularly with some other teachers she works with. I look forward to the day that she can be herself without the risk of losing her job. Let's hope the tide changes soon. Georgina, thank you for that. And there's a couple of other callers pointed out. I mean, it's why if you're a teacher and you walk into school with a badge saying, I love Andrew Tate, I can see the problem. OK, but if it turns out, you know, someone discovered you voted for Brexit, a perfectly legitimate democratic referendum, I cannot see the problem. And somebody who has a problem with that, as our previous caller mentioned, anyone who does have a problem is the problem, if that makes sense. Have I said the word problem too many times that I've created another problem? Maybe. Let's move to this story. I mentioned it there, the UK facing a surge in channel crossings after this deal with the French, this gazillion pound, 475 million pound deal is coming to an end. Well, look, Thomas Godfrey is here, news reporter at The Sun. He can explain more. I'm struggling, Thomas, and good to see you, by the way. When it was all carved out, I remember them saying, I don't know if it was Rishi or Boris, whoever it was, like, here's some money to the French. I've still been sitting here waiting for it to be spent. Apparently it's now finished, or about to be.
It is about to be finished, yeah. Next week this deal expires. So this was signed by Rishi Sunak almost 3 years ago now. Yeah. 475 million in total. Nice money if you can get it, by the way. But the impact over the last 3 years, frankly, just has not been felt. Boat crossings have continued to go up, and the number of preventions the French have made actually have gone down. Right. So both the sort of intended consequences of this money, which was boat crossings would go down, preventions would go up, well, yes, it's had the exact opposite effect. And that's why the Home Secretary now, Shabana Mahmood, saying she wants more bang for her buck from the French authorities, who so far in Calais have failed to do a good enough job.
Yeah, and it doesn't... I mean, I get the... It's all quite confusing, isn't it? Because many people have other theories about how you could stop this thing. But they're obviously not being put into action. So the British government said, OK, we'll ask the French to intercept more. The French said, OK, but, you know, somebody leaving our shores, we don't have a dedicated police service or border force for just that, unless you give us a squillion quid. So Rishi went, yeah, of course, because I, you know, recently paid half the country not to go to work for 2.5 years. So I'm used to spending lots of money. Here's 475 million quid. This will make a difference, of course. I mean, if what we've seen in the last 5 years is evidence of making a difference, then good Lord. I mean, because we have tens of thousands of mostly young men that have made it across the channel on boats despite this money being there. So now Shabana Mahmood has gone, OK, we'll have to sort of put an incentivisation into this.
Yeah, absolutely. Sort of performance-related clauses in this. And it does make sense. Why should we continue to hand the French money regardless of how they perform, regardless of if they actually stop any of these boats or destroy any of the people smuggling networks that are in action across Europe to get countless people across the Channel to the UK? There does have to be some consequences, surely, for the failures on their part. Now, it wasn't until that long ago, of course, you'll remember, the French police forces who we're funding, the officers on the coastline that we're funding in northern France, were refusing to even go into the water. And you had sort of farcical scenes where
health and safety, Thomas, health and safety.
You'd get these sunrise videos of migrants setting off on dinghies, hugely, horrifically overcrowded. But the moment they got into the water, the French cops would just turn and walk the other way because there was nothing that they could do under French laws. There are some incredibly strong policing unions in France who have continually campaigned against them being forced to go into the water, which, of course, is what we're paying them to do, to stop the boats.
Yeah, there was I don't know if it was just a lone copper, but they did once pop a boat, didn't they?
They did.
I don't mean when it was mid-sea, because that wouldn't be designed.
No,
but before it could...
Knee-height water.
He whipped out his little Swiss Army knife and just sort of sneaked, like he was doing a tyre outside of a pub of a kind of new boyfriend of his ex, you know. He just kind of popped it in there, and it just went... And it worked a treat because that boat didn't. Now, I don't know what the logistics of that are. All I do know is I once saw a David Attenborough documentary which was about a tribe. So I don't know where it was. And these fellas, you know, it was a kind of an old tribe that they had all the old hunting techniques. They still use those blowpipes, and they could take a monkey out of a tree in Papua New Guinea with a dart thing. It went about a mile, this thing. That monkey, that was the last day of monkey. The monkey was down on the ground with a big old thud, and they all had a beautiful dinner for the evening. Now, I'd get those blokes to sit in the hills of Calais and go, right, boys, get your pipes out, because the boats are coming. They wouldn't miss a trick.
You'd have to be pretty accurate with those darts. I mean, there are obviously claims, and there have been for a long time, that this is just a complete waste of our money.
Yes.
But we can't put British troops, we can't put British police, we can't put anyone with a big British Union Jack badge on the shores of Calais because, well, it was British sovereign territory at one point. It isn't anymore. Maybe that was our error in the first place.
Yeah, that's the problem.
Was giving Calais back to the French. We do understand that there is a Home Office team actually going across the Channel, not by small boat, by plane, to France this week to actually hammer out the fine details of what the next deal might look like. The French say that their officers, the French police officers, are facing new and more sophisticated threats from inside these camps because they are genuinely, having been there myself, very dangerous places to go. You get people from all over the world who aren't, as they are in this country, put into government-funded accommodation. In France. There are camps. They're not pleasant places at all. There are volunteers, generally from charities, who go around with food, water, electrical outlets.
Care for Calais, these kind of groups,
Care for Calais, relatively well-established charities. But also, there are people smugglers there. There's one camp I was in where it was you can imagine a line in the middle of the road. On one side of the road are migrants looking for a route to get across the Channel, and on the other side is the selling side. It's people smugglers.
Well, this is like a mafia, isn't it? And I don't overuse that word. It's genuinely.
It is genuinely like a mafia. This is organised crime. It goes around the world, particularly in Europe. There are networks for boats. There are networks for selling spots on those boats, and that is what this money was meant to go towards smashing. You remember Keir Starmer, one of his election pledges, smash the gangs.
Smash the gangs.
Heard it so many times in the middle of 2024.
How many has he smashed so far? I don't think we've got into. I don't think we've got off the number one.
I don't think so, no. I mean, the number's certainly going up in terms of people coming across the Channel. Last year, 41,000 or so, the second highest year annually. And actually, all you have to do to look at whether we're getting value for money is look at how many people the French are stopping. So in the first 11 weeks of 2025, it was 3,227. That compares to 4,395 arrivals. That means for every prevention, 1.36 migrants arrived. Now let's look at the first 11 weeks of this year. There have been 1,865 preventions, and that's because fewer people are coming over, I should say, and 3,457 arrivals. So that ratio has shot up to 1.85. So if the French were trying to get any more money out of the British, then they're certainly not doing a very good job of it. And Shabana Mahmood may be well within her rights now to send this Home Office delegation and basically say, well, where the hell are our results?
Where are our results? And of course, the ones that they stop, I mean, the smart money suggests that the guys on that boat just go round again and get on the next boat, or the one a couple of days later. So it's possible that actually, in terms of raw numbers, no one's being stopped.
Well, I mean,
because you just give it another go. I don't imagine many people go, well, I gave it a go on the boat. I got scuppered. I was only 3 foot into the water. I'm going to go back to Eritrea. I don't think that happens.
It doesn't happen, no. And when I was in Calais last year, I spoke to someone who had tried 7 or 8 times and had been turned back, all they'd got to the coast and realised the weather wasn't good enough, the sea was too choppy, it was just too risky. And by the way, these people smugglers will take inordinate risks to fill their boots. But if people do die on their boats, well, it does scupper their business model.
Of course.
So they're not too keen to have fatalities, and of course no one is keen to have fatalities in the Channel. It is horrible, the number of people who have set out on that journey and died during it.
That's for sure.
So actually, people will just try again, and they will try and try and try until they manage to get across. No amount of money, it seems, so far has been a deterrent, and maybe the only bit of energising we can do to the French, the only bit of incentivising we can do is to tell them, well, if you don't take them away, we just won't pay you.
Yes.
We just will not give you any money at all, and then they're all on their own. But if they do retaliate in that circumstance by pulling the French police forces away from Calais and the shores altogether, then well, maybe we're in a worse place than we started. So it's a tricky situation for the Home Secretary. I don't think anyone's denying that. But I think actually on this occasion, Britain needs to stand up for itself a bit more.
I'd like to think Shabana Mahmood, under the bit of any other business, has got blow dart suggestion written at the bottom, because I think there's something potentially in that. Before we finish, Thomas, different story, domestic story. You've written about it in The Sun today. You've been looking at this. I was telling you this during the break. There was once upon a time, if you talked about potholes, essentially your journalistic career was over. You know, if you'd gone to your editor and gone, I've got a great pothole story, they said, yeah, I've got another story. It's a door in the wall over there. Nobody wanted to talk about potholes, quite boring, it's very local radio stuff. However, it's now taken on a whole new vibe because the pothole stories are big, they're dangerous, they're lethal, they're expensive, people can even die, I mean quite literally if you're a cyclist. You were looking at Birmingham, and there's some astonishing figures.
There are, absolutely, yeah. It's no exaggeration to say that British roads have gone to pot, mainly because of potholes. Birmingham Council, far and away the worst at this. So figures show last year there were 60 miles of minor roads, B&C roads, residential roads in Birmingham, where surveyors had been round and said that needs improving. Out of those 60 miles, in the year to last March, Birmingham Council fixed 1.5 miles of that stretch. That's 2.5%. So despite another Labour manifesto promise to fill in record numbers of potholes and get British roads into top shape, it seems that's not happening. There were 16 councils, Ian, where less than 10% of roads recommended for repairs weren't fixed at all. Less than 10% of those roads were fixed. And in 10 of those 16, the local authorities were run by Labour. So some serious questions for the Department of Transport to answer. I imagine many of your listeners will be on the road right now, maybe going over a pothole as we speak, and their voice vibrating as they rattle across these horrible ditches in the road.
Some of these are like...
hopefully agreeing with us.
Yeah, I've been on Alton Tower rides that were less perilous than some of those pothole journeys. But that's an astonishing figure. So Birmingham and earmarked 60 miles of road, and they fixed 1.5
miles. So
wow.
I'd like to go on the 1.5 miles that was fixed, because as soon as you get away from that...
Right.
You're done, aren't you?
I didn't get that job on Countdown for a good reason, because my maths isn't that good, but that means we'd be looking, on that basis, about 50 years to complete that.
Yeah, pretty much. If we carry on at the current rate, and that's assuming, of course, no other roads get damaged in that time.
Yeah, it's like
no other roads. Some other bad examples: St Helens in the northwest, 44 miles of roads earmarked for repairs, just 1.2 miles fixed. In Islington, just 0.4 miles fixed, and in that's just 6.7% of the miles. And in Milton Keynes, also very, very few amount of roads fixed. And of course, Milton Keynes, if you know anything about it, built for cars, built in nice handy American style squares that you can drive round in.
Can't have a pothole in Milton Keynes. That's an outrageous situation.
It's the anti-pothole city, which is full of potholes.
Full of potholes. Thomas, great to see you again. Thank you. Thomas Godfrey, Sun journalist, reporting on a whole array of issues. This is what we bring you here on Talk. Thank you to him. More from you in a couple of moments. 0344 499 1000. This is Talk.
The Crown is facing its gravest test in decades, and the royalty from Talk is your front row seat. With royal reputations under pressure and probing questions about public trust, we unpack every twist and revelation with the biggest names in the business. From the throne room at Buckingham Palace to a mansion in Montecito, we follow every royal ripple. Never miss a moment of The Crown in Crisis. Subscribe to the royalty from Talk on the app or wherever you get your podcasts.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Lots of comment coming through. No name given on this one. Says, surely if you import millions of young men from abroad, it's going to affect the young men already here. Jobs, education, opportunities. You wonder why there's an increase in mental health issues and benefit dependence if young white boys are continually called the problem. What do you expect? That's a fair point. Margaret says, Ian, another gimmick from Shabana on the way. She's getting these gimmicks out of a Christmas cracker. Nothing is working. And if Starmer backs our Ange, Shabana will resign. Yeah, it may well get to that point. Although it's kind of interesting, when you're really seduced by high office, and we saw it with, well, none more so than Ed Miliband, there's been a couple of announcements, airport expansion, couple of oil fields not closing down, few bits and pieces that you'd think would be enough for Red Ed to just like absolutely discombobulate and his head to spin around and do a full 360. But he didn't. He stayed in the job. I mean, airport expansion, that would be it, wouldn't it? If you were in charge of net zero and the government you serve in says we're going to expand the airport, you just go, you just resign and go, well, I can't be part of that because I believe this. I believe the very opposite to that. Not our Ed. He loved a red box, did Ed, and the car that goes with it as well. Martin is in Exeter. Back to working class boys. Martin, afternoon to you.
Hi. My other half is a retired teacher and also went to Cambridge. Her best mates, 4 of them, also went to Cambridge. I'm now under an assumed name. I'm now Frank from Billericay.
Okay.
They're mental. They are absolutely mental. When you have a conversation with them, they just say things. It takes you 5 minutes to comprehend what they've said. So I'll give you an example. So they'll come around, and my wife's upstairs, and I'll say, "Oh, would you like a read while you're waiting?" As a joke.
Yeah.
And we've got lots of books, and at the bottom, so Dostoevsky, and down the bottom there, we've got Thomas the Tank Engine. Oh, I can't read that. It's sexist and racist.
And what Thomas the Tank Engine is?
Thomas the Tank Engine, and it takes you a few seconds to comprehend what they've said, and then I just assumed it was a joke, but it's not.
But it's not a joke. So Thomas the Tank Engine is racist and
sexist.
Why? I mean, they don't know anything about Thomas's proclivities, do they? I mean, Thomas could be a practicing homosexualist. Nobody would.
Well, obviously,
that puts him surely in a diverse minority group.
And I'm telling you, they absolutely mean it. And of course, in the sort of classroom environment, they monitor what you say. They monitor what I say.
Do they need? You see, the interesting thing about left-wing thinking at that level is that the only way it can function is if it has an enemy, because the whole thing just comes crumbling down. Exactly, you're the enemy. So, but if there isn't an enemy, then what you have to do is create one. It's like, St. George trying to slay a second dragon. There isn't one there, but you have to keep going as if there is. So you construct these just bizarre arguments in order for someone to have to defend it or whatever, so that you can get angry. I mean, Thomas the Tank Engine. I mean, really.
I'm telling you, and we've had conversations, and what happens is they work in packs. So you'll be having you'll be having a conversation, and you're aware that one of them has got their eye on you, and as you start talking, they start to twitch. And I'm being dead serious. They start to twitch, and then comes the heavy breathing, and then the standing up in indignation.
Then the pounce.
And then the flounce. Yes, that's a perfect word. And you can't say that. And
wow.
And after, I have to go to the pub just to calm down, just to...
Well, it's a good way to get out of an event and go to the pub, isn't it? Just sort of say something that is, you know, apparently offensive to that particular cohort.
Yeah, but saying something offensive would be, for example, what caused that outburst. I said, there are some people who claim the dole as a lifestyle choice. Well, my godfathers, an hour later, they were still ranting, and... until you're in it and you experience it, you can't believe it. And if those people are controlling, that's normal for them.
Yes.
So, and they're teaching our children.
Indeed. I was talking to somebody in my neck of the woods, and I told this story the other day, Martin, where she said to me, what are the big subjects at work that you're talking about? And I just mentioned channel migrant crossings. Now, she doesn't know anything really about what I do other than the fact I'm on the radio doing talk stuff. She doesn't know about what angles or opinions. So I said, yeah, the channel migrants is a big one. She goes, oh, I know. What are we going to do about this? You know, surely there must be some help for these people. And she talked about it like we were discussing a sort of Bob Geldof-endorsed famine. And I thought, this is very bizarre, because I'm now having a conversation I didn't expect to be having. She thought I was raising a humanitarian crisis.
And it takes you a while for your brain to adjust where they are.
Yeah.
Because normal people are not like that. But these are the people that are in charge. These are the people that are indoctrinating our children.
It's extraordinary, isn't it? I love it. Listen, Martin, thank you for brilliantly sharing that in a very amusing way as well. The process of the indignant and exasperated wokerati and what happens. They twitch, they work in packs, then the heavy breathing starts, and then they pounce. Or did he think I said flounce? But either way. But that's how it kind of works, yeah. It's bizarre. Some breaking news. Prime Minister Keir Starmer is about to chair that Cobra meeting over Iran's war impact on the economy. When we get... So obviously, the meeting is, by definition, not filmed or anything. But when we get some lines out of that, we'll bring it to you here first. Kevin is in Basingstoke. Back to the big issue, Kevin. What have you got for us? Good afternoon.
Well, I'm one of those wokerati that you've just spent a few minutes demonising.
It's a national scandal.
We keep calling about white working class people not achieving as much.
Yes.
But that's been going on for 20 years. But then they was called chavs. Nobody cared about them now. But now all of a sudden there's this divisive politics going on. The people that spent 20 years demonising them, now they're pretending that they care about them.
Yeah, I'm not quite sure they're the same thing that we're talking about here. I mean, this came around, this identifying the white working essentially came around because of Black Lives Matter, when Boris Johnson wanted to look into, I mean, of all the things that, you know, I'm sure you hate Boris Johnson, Kevin, but on this, he was trying to say, look, there's clearly an argument about diversity and division. Let's look into it. He appointed a very bright guy to look into it, and one of the conclusions was that the bottom of the pile was white working class boys.
Well, it may be, but the Conservatives spent 14 years cutting public services, including education. They pretend that they care, but then take away your money from these sort of people. And you just said something about, you had a conversation about asylum seekers. Asylum seekers cost this country about £4 billion a year.
Well, boat people, yeah.
If there wasn't a single asylum seeker in this country or ever came here again, we'd still be in the same situation, but the right-wing media and the Daily Mail would just be putting the blame at somebody else's doorstep instead of massive inequality.
Well, they might be. But you said £4 billion a year like it's not much money.
It's not much money when you've got a GDP of something like 3 trillion.
I mean, £4 billion a year is telephone numbers, Kevin. You could run hospitals on that kind of money. Don't be daft. It's a lot of money.
Yeah, but they cut. They haven't. Yeah, but you could do, but they don't. They decrease in real terms the money going to things like hospitals. They don't. I'll tell you what, the Conservatives and the Reform are. They're just like Trump. They cut.
They're really not. They're really not, by the way. I mean, no government spent more on welfare in history than the last Conservative government. Now, some of it was by accident.
That's not true.
No, it is absolutely true. I promise you, the welfare budget increased every single year in that time.
20 years ago, we spent 11% of GDP on welfare payments. Now we spend 10%, so we actually spend less.
Well,
in real terms.
OK, but then you've completely forgotten what doesn't any longer get classed as a welfare payment. I'm not, by the way, defending the Tories. They were flipping hopeless, by the way. So there's no defence of the Tories. But the idea that the Conservative Party are like Donald Trump's party is just bonkers, mate.
In the 80s, there were about 25 billionaires in this country. Now there's 160.
So that's good news, right?
No, it's not good news.
Why is it not good news?
Economics doesn't work.
Well, even if it doesn't trickle down, so what? There's more rich people. That's a good thing, right?
Yeah, but they avoid paying tax. They've got tax havens.
All of them? All
they
of them?
don't pay tax here.
All billionaires avoid their tax.
They buy up the media.
How do they buy up the media?
They buy up the media.
How do they buy up the media?
Our media is owned by a handful of offshore billionaires.
Well, the fact that they might own some of the media doesn't in itself prove your point that there's something negative in terms of the way our country functions.
And I owned the Daily Mail and the Daily Express, do you think people's views in this country would be a little bit different? Because I would make sure that they were, like they do.
What? Really?
Really.
So you think that's how it works?
Yes, definitely. Yeah. All these people that own the media...
It really doesn't work like that,
billions to these political parties to get their point of view across.
Some of them do, some of them don't. Doesn't really benefit much at all. If you look at how the world has functioned, the Conservative Party have hardly done the workings of any billionaire over the last bunch of decades. They might be friendly with some. They might have some sympathy and understanding with a branch of the media that reflects what they already thought. But I don't think you could construct an argument, an intelligent argument.
Why do you think Christopher Harborn, that lives in Thailand, gave $6 million to the Brexit Party and $9 million to Reform UK? It's because it benefits him and his businesses in this country.
Yeah,
and he doesn't give that money out the goodness of his heart, does he?
Well, good for him. He wants to see that party succeed.
Yeah, of course he does.
What's wrong with that?
Because it benefits rich. Because it benefits the rich. It doesn't benefit the working class like Reform pretend that they care about.
Well, you say it doesn't benefit the working class. That's your desired view. You've got no evidence for that. You can have... So if I have a view that I want to see a political party in power, then my only desire for that could be self-interest, is what you're saying.
At least they phone in and I oppose what you're saying. Most people that phone in give their opinion.
No, I love it. Kevin, I love it when somebody like you phones in. I absolutely love it. You sound like a decent bloke and, I think it's great to debate those points. But rich people aren't...
I think talkTV is actually quite good for letting me on, because half the time I'm surprised you do. Yeah. Because... you know that I'm going to give the opposite opinion.
No, but that's brilliant. The idea that you don't want the opposite opinion... Oh, just stay there a sec, Kev. Guys, can you ban Kevin in future, please? Sorry, Kev, you still there?
I'm not saying you ban me, but I'm
Listen,
just saying...
we would never do that.
I'm so surprised you let me on, because I'm the complete opposite to...
Listen, every now and again, it's important that we broadcast the dead wood as well as those that are informed. So that's why.
Am I the dead wood?
I'm jesting with you, Kev. Listen, great to talk. Love chewing the fat on these things. Thank you, Kevin in Basingstoke. This is Talk.
across the UK. On DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
It is Talk, 0344 499 1000. More of your calls and comments on the way in just a couple of moments' time. Let's look at this story. The High Court judge that has ordered Croydon Council to scrap 6 low-traffic neighbourhoods and refund millions in fines. I had to read this story twice. I thought, really? Some unfairly fined people are getting some money back from a local authority. They ruled the council illegally created the low-traffic neighbourhoods primarily as a fat cash cow for revenue, not for the, quote, modest environmental benefits that it claimed. Let's speak to Farah London, former London mayoral candidate. Farah, good afternoon to you. Nice to have you with us. I mean, this is, you know, in one respect, we can go, hey, this is fantastic. But actually, there's a lot of money been wasted in all of this. It should never have got to this point.
Ian, honestly, this is such a victory. I have campaigned about LTNs across all over 32 boroughs. I've spoken to residents, to businesses who have been impacted. And in particular, I'm originally from Croydon, so it's even more personal to me that Croydon won this victory because they've been fighting hard for many, many years. And listening to the residents, it was just created for many different reasons. They said it was obviously for the environment, but it wasn't true. They were creating division within communities, gated communities. They were isolating the vulnerable, the elderly, the disabled, who could no longer get there. People could no longer get to the hospital quick enough. They'd have to take these ridiculous, instead of a 10-minute journey, it would take them 40 minutes to get to the hospital in emergencies.
So
I mean, I can go on and on.
The low traffic neighbourhood thing is a bit of an umbrella term, isn't it? Because different places run them in different ways. Some just completely close off roads. Others put cameras in. Others, like, for example, in the centre of London, where you can't even go in if you have a certain kind of car, etc. Or if you do, you have to pay a charge for it. So there's a sort of variety of methods. What was Croydon's main contention then when they set these up? I mentioned it in the beginning. This was sort of about the environment. Is that the game they played? We're going to save the world.
This was the game all the councils played. What they did during the pandemic, they took advantage that people were not paying attention, weren't outside, and all of a sudden overnight we had across London installed these low traffic neighbourhoods. You saw the planters. Now, what we're talking about, the fines, is where the council has been using the ANPR cameras that police use, and the way they fixed it, they just fine people that go through, but they don't put visible sign. So the signage was very poor. So therefore, people were getting fined all the time, and it's just criminal that they got away with it. Now, Enfield, I know that council, I think in 1 year, made around 3 million just on fines. Wow. It's shocking. It's a cash guzzler. It's exactly what it was. They were making money across London. It's not only in Croydon, it was happening across London. And nothing was being done because the councils aren't being held accountable by the Mayor of London. And that's the biggest problem. They act like a little cartel doing whatever they want because no one is holding them accountable. And they got away with it for so long. But thank God, things are changing.
Yeah, I mean, it's just an extraordinary amount of money. They went to an extraordinary amount of effort. And as the ruling decreed, and I mentioned it there in the introduction, Farah, they said that this was primarily a cash cow, not for the, quote, modest environmental benefits claimed.
It actually causes more environmental pollution because if you think about it logically, if you're putting people on longer journeys, therefore you're increasing the amount of pollution in the air.
Yeah.
So like I said, a 10-minute journey will take 40 minutes. So logically, there was no logic to the LTN system. And this is why, even I went to Islington once, and this is shocking. Yes, exactly, these planters. This is shocking. In Islington, a local resident would padlock so that even the fire engines, no one could get through. He would put padlocks there.
Wow.
Private padlocks.
So to literally stop anyone squeezing between the planters, is that right?
Absolutely.
So they put their own kind of chain across it, so somebody comes along, a paramedic comes
He would
along,
padlock the
because
boulders.
Elsie's had a fall and you can't get over there.
He would padlock the boulders so that the police would have to send, fire brigade to break the padlocks. That's why, I mean, communities became divided. People love their closed little neighborhood. Even as a woman or even as a grown man, you'd be going down these very quiet streets all of a sudden and feel scared because, you were just all of a sudden isolated. So again, I've talked about the vulnerabilities of the elderly, where they would have to get dropped off. They couldn't get to their homes. And you can imagine it's difficult as a disabled person as well. So
we've heard of cab drivers, black cab drivers, which the last time I looked are a crucial part of London's transportation system. Not always acknowledged by the mayor, but that's literally in terms of surface transport, they are key. And so many stories from those guys who couldn't pick somebody up to park half a mile down the road to pick someone up because they couldn't get into their road to do it. And similarly when dropping off.
Exactly. So that's why when you look at all the devastation it's caused across communities for over 6 years, and it's not justified, and it really has just been a cash cow. Councils have profited, people have paid ridiculous amount in fines, and communities have really suffered. I spoke where neighbours have stopped talking to one another because of the LTNs.
Because it's divided the room.
It completely divided communities.
And one here from Roberto, who says it's the same with the 20-mile-an-hour limits in London as well, and of course elsewhere, has a sort of similar effect, doesn't it? We all support somebody slowing down outside schools and hospitals, and in a rat run of houses, you don't want a boy racer with a Subaru going 50 down there. It all makes sense, but this sort of almost blanket rollout of 20 miles an hour is insane.
The problem is London is a moving city, and the people who are making these rules, and I have to again blame the mayor's office, they don't understand how society is functioning. Even when they put these ridiculous environmental fines on the wider Greater London, they just don't understand. People can't afford to live even these days, and you're putting so many fines on them. Another problem happened with lots of businesses. People could no longer access the high street.
Yeah.
So if you look at Tooting High Street, they basically blocked any access onto the main road. So businesses lost thousands and thousands of pounds. So you're not only affecting the residents, you're affecting the local businesses who've closed down. And I've heard so many heartbreaking stories. People who've been there for over 25 years had to close their shop down.
Yeah. Because nobody could get anywhere near it. I mean, it's just these are just obvious stories. You might think that, that those in charge, the mayor's office and all the sort of transportation advisors, somebody would be able to spot this. It's kind of sixth form stuff that you could work this out. All the reasons we've discussed here this afternoon. The problem, of course, these people are wedded to this sort of green ideology, which they genuinely believe either they're saving the planet and therefore it makes them a nicer person because of that. So you can't go, oh, well, I've got to walk further to the shops, because they'll say, we're saving the world here. Your extra walk to the shop makes no odds to anybody. Go away. We're saving planet Earth. They think like that. So it's very hard to kind of penetrate this sort of, supremely illogical position that is profoundly wrong.
What you're saying is common sense, exactly, sixth form common sense. But what they're trying to do is frustrate drivers. So drivers stop using their cars.
Yeah.
But then if you look at public transport, that's not very accessible, is it? And if you look at the pollution within the London Underground itself, it's horrific.
I mean, there is
scary.
Absolutely. If this was all about, I mean, I appreciate that, closing down an underground system would be, suicide for a city. However, if you were that really that bothered, you know, human health, and then you get all these statistics, since the mayor put the cameras in, you know, 7,000 more people have lived that would have died. This is nonsense. There's nothing that backs that up. These are statistical constructs that are designed to seduce the stupid, and that it kind of works. The London Underground absolutely is where the problems are when it comes to health.
Absolutely. I've actually looked at reports, shocking reports on the amount of pollution in the London Underground, but that's never been addressed. That's not reported. But then they talk about cars causing pollution, and you're talking about going electric, but you don't have the infrastructure to go electric.
True.
People can't charge their cars. So yes, let's go green, but then put the infrastructure in so we can go green. Make it affordable. You know, it's just complete mess. The mayor's office doesn't know what they're doing, which is apparent. We've just discussed logically, if you're making people drive for longer, aren't you causing more pollution in the air? Again, common sense.
Yep.
So common sense is lacking. That's what's lacking in politics, common sense.
But it seems to be a qualification, or a lack of common sense seems to be a qualification for the top jobs, it seems. Either that or decent people suddenly, as I said to an earlier guest, you know, you get the job and then you get injected with a serum that removes all common sense and logic, and then you're fit to govern. And that's how you come up with daft decisions like sticking LTNs in places that really don't need them. Listen, Farah, we will speak again. Thank you for coming on with us. Farah London, who's a former London mayor candidate. Great to have your name in the city you were wanting to represent. Love speaking to her. Great. If you were one of the people in Croydon, by the way, that's due to get a refund, because this could be millions in fines that the council in Croydon have got to pay back because they put up a load of moody, low-traffic neighbourhoods and thought they could get away with it. The ruling was that the council illegally created these things in order to make money, not because of some environmental impact, which was modest at best, according to the ruling. It was all about money, and you're not allowed to do that. You're breaking the rules. The filthy old swines in local councils that put this stuff in place should frankly be in jail. It's a bit laughable, but it's also very serious. Are you due a bonanza, a refund from Croydon or anywhere else for that matter? 0344 499 1000. Oh, by the way, we haven't done the voice of doom. This is like an hour ago that we gave you the voice. Have a listen.
There's hardly any experience.
Who is that? Very simple question. Has anybody got it correct? These are some of the guesses. Michael Crawford, Tony Blair, a young Tony Blair, Mark Oaten, God, remember him. Ed Miliband, no. John Gummer, no. Alistair Strathern, no. Nigel Huddleston, no. We haven't got a winner. It rolls over. It's back tomorrow for day 14. Stand by for that, and we'll go back to your calls next on Talk.
Conflict. I was sat in the tent and he was showing me through photos of his phone, scrolling through. this was barbaric, horrific stuff. Blokes going through walls in vehicles and then jumping out and shooting everyone. His WhatsApp picture was him with a mask on, with a gun like that.
You're in a tent with this guy?
I'm in a tent with this guy, and actually he's just showing me this stuff. I'm just thinking, this is not the kind of bloke you want to be coming to the UK.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Are we back? Yeah, we are. Lots to get through, even though we've only got about 10 minutes left. Kevin O'Sullivan will pop in between now and then. Gary says, it's rather disturbing that your earlier guest from The Sun revealed that the French police are afraid to go into the migrant camps in Calais because it's too dangerous, given that when these people arrive here on boats, our government put them into hotels, gives them some pocket money and lets them wander among us. Oh, by the way, I remember specifically when a French police officer, for the one and only time, stuck a knife into the dinghy. It was in July last year, about 3 days before Macron visited the UK and conned Starmer into signing that disastrous one-in, one-out deal. Do you think by chance the two events may have been connected? I think you might be right. Yeah, look, our boys, they got the knives and they do the boats before they even get off the beach. Maybe it was. David in Cotswold says, Ian, reference the blowpipe, blow dart idea to tackle the dinghy situation. It worked in the Beano, and since thieves and Ed Zero get their policy ideas from comics, whoever is in charge of the boat people today may well get on board with this, figuratively and literally, says David. That's a very good point. Yeah. Can't knock a blow dart. Richard is but don't try it at home. Richard in North London, back to working class boys. What have you got, Richard? Good afternoon.
Yeah, very, very quickly, Ian. We seem to be sort of schooled or directed into talking about the same things again and again and again. Obviously, we talked about this before. But it looks as though white boys, at least they're not overrepresented in the statistics of people who are involved in stabbing or violent crime. Because I think if you remember last year, I think we've said before, okay, it's 6 years ago now, but when Labour tried to get Cressida Dick sacked as the
head of the
Metropolitan Commissioner, head of the Met, and Yvette Cooper said, "Oh, there's all this stop and search," and of course, Cressida Dick said, "Well, that's because people from certain demographics, certainly apparently in London, are 8 times more likely to commit homicide." So it's funny how these comparisons and statistics are only sort of made with certain groups. So we hear about failing white boys. Obviously, they're not failing in terms of crime. And there's other things that we just never hear about. Ian. So there was a horrible incident on a train in Huntington last autumn, and that was basically a mass stabbing. And all of a sudden, it goes quiet. I don't know if you remember the Axel Rudikabana case. I think he first of all pleaded guilty for a number of months, and then there was a very quick first of all he pleaded not guilty. Then I think it was Halloween 2025. there was a sudden announcement that he pleaded guilty, and it was all basically brushed over. I just think sometimes we're being played by the authorities because they don't want us to see a much bigger picture.
Well, that may well be true. I mean, I think in the Cabana case, I don't think there was really. I mean, it was pretty hard to, plead not guilty, wasn't it? I suppose when you've got so many, witnesses to this horrendous case. Maybe a lawyer talked him round, but I hear what you're saying, Richard. I mean, certainly when it comes to which statistics people adopt and run with, it very much just depends, doesn't it, on what your opinion is. I mean, it's the same on, I don't know. We're all guilty of it to a degree, protests and rallies and gatherings. We like them when they represent a view we agree with, but we don't like them when they don't. So there's a bit of that, but I think you're onto a wider point there, and I think you're right as well. Richard, thank you for that. I'm going to move just to get another voice on before the news. Dan is in Norwich. Dan, what have you got for us? Good afternoon to you. LTNs.
Yeah, good afternoon. Yeah, I actually live in Huntingdon now, not Norwich anymore.
Okay.
Ian, I love the show, by the way.
Thank you.
It's just regarding these fines.
Yes.
I think people are also getting points in their licence, but where does the refund end? If people are getting points, their insurance goes up as a result of that.
Yep.
And some people may actually get so many points on their licence that they might lose their jobs. So, where does this compensation, where does it end? It's as a driver myself, I drive for a living, I'm all over the country.
Sure.
But if I get points, I'm going to lose my job.
Of course. Because you get points as well for that, do you? For the low traffic neighbourhood thing. I don't know if you do, but I'm assuming on what you have just said, maybe there are some cases where you do get points, like you would if you went through a red light, yeah?
That's right, yeah. If we're talking about these 20-mile-per-hour limit zones...
Oh, definitely, yeah. You definitely would on that, yes. You would. So if they then... Yeah, what happens to your points if you've been given the points already? Cracking point. Dan, I'm going to stop there just because we've hit the clock. But it's a good point to ponder on and to end on as well. Thank you to Dan in Huntingdon. Let's go to Kevin O'Sullivan, who's down in London. Kevin, good afternoon. What have you got
Hello,
for us?
Ian. First-time caller.
Welcome along. You a bit nervous?
Very nervous, yes, but bear with me.
Okay.
So here's a story for you. Everything affects us all. In the middle of the night, I was vaguely aware that my wife had got up, but I was asleep, didn't really know. And then she comes back to bed, nudges me. So, did you hear that? I said, what? No. It sounded like an explosion. I said, don't be ridiculous. It'll be an empty truck trundling past the house. You know what they make of. It was those ambulances going off.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
Exactly that.
Because you're not a million miles away.
We're about a mile and a half, 2 miles.
Yeah.
And, at that time, 1:45 in the morning.
Yes.
The noise, 4 ambulances going up must have made quite a racket.
Oh, you'd think so, wouldn't you?
So there you
they're
are.
sort of resisting, they're going, well, we think it might be a hate crime. You think it might be an act of terrorism. You think?
The government is trying to edge it towards being a hate crime because that's not as bad as terrorism.
Yes, it's like
it was a terrorist attack, and the police and experts, intelligence services, fear it may have been organised by Iran.
Yeah.
So lots to worry about. Just as Iran may well now be able to hit us with missiles.
Yeah.
Steve Reid, on the Labour Cabinet Secretary, on the media round yesterday, said no, we're happy that Iran is not targeting us. Not actually saying, no, they can't reach us with missiles. We don't think they're targeting us.
But they can reach Diego Garcia.
Yeah, but they can reach us is the point.
Correct.
And the only thing this government can manage is we don't think they're targeting us.
Yeah.
This government is not keeping the citizens of this country safe.
Agreed.
It is very serious. We'll also cover the new surge in channel crossings, over 500 last week, and still they come because the weather's good. Shabana Mahmood says she's going to deport thousands of migrants before they can appeal. I doubt whether or not this human rights obsessed government will allow that. Meanwhile, she's on resignation watch because all of the left-wing, the far-left Labour backbenchers don't want her migrant crisis crackdown.
Yeah.
So she's trying to do something about